Chapter 182. Jing Tan was lying on the sofa, looking down at the leopard cat next to the coffee table. The leopard cat just stood there, growling, but no one dared to pull it away. It didn't look easy. "Anna, pull your cat away," Qin Tao whispered to the girl who had brought the leopard cat in. The girl named Anna frowned. "It's better not to touch it at this time. It's angry. Besides, the trainer my parents hired said that if it behaves like this, it must have met someone or something difficult to deal with. I can't handle it alone." Anna also felt strange. There were only Tang Kai and the black cat on the sofa over there. It couldn't be Tang Kai who made the leopard cat like this. When they were in the bathroom, the leopard cat had scratched Tang Kai and was not afraid at all. But if it was the black cat, let alone Anna herself, most of the people present would not believe it. Qin Tao took out his mobile phone and was about to call Sister Sha to get some help. He didn't want to see any bloodshed here. When a cat went crazy, its destructive power would be no less than Tang Kai's, especially such a big cat. When cats confronted each other, it didn't mean that you were more powerful, louder, or more powerful. Jing Tan didn't want to pay attention to this guy. There were so many people in the room, and Jing Tan didn't want to cause any trouble. If this guy knew what was good for him and took the initiative to step back, everyone would be safe. However, things didn't develop in the way Jing Tan had hoped. This leopard cat was obviously not the type to back down easily. Maybe to other people in the room, this leopard cat had been roaring inexplicably, but from the low growls of this leopard cat, Jing Tan could tell that this guy had begun to change his mind. Just now, it was just purely vigilant, but gradually, it seemed to be suppressed by some kind of idea, and it began to have some provocative and aggressive intentions. Its ears were pulled back, and its whiskers were raised. When it growled, it opened its mouth and showed its fangs. Jing Tan moved the tip of its tail, then raised its claw to push Tang Kai's hand away and stretched. Tang Kai was staring at the leopard cat nervously. When she felt her fingers being pushed away and saw Jing Tan like this, she quickly stretched out her arm and blocked in front of Jing Tan in a protective manner. She was afraid that the leopard cat would suddenly rush over. Although she didn't quite understand why the leopard cat would act like this, she, like everyone else in the room, consciously placed Jing Tan in a vulnerable position. Jing Tan was very grateful for Tang Kai's protective attitude, but he didn't want to be protected by a girl in this kind of situation. He raised his claw and pushed away the arm in front of him. Suddenly, Jing Tan's movements paused. His nose twitched, and he looked at Tang Kai's arm. He saw a claw mark on the sleeve of her motorcycle uniform. The uniform had been clawed through. When Tang Kai had reached out to scratch Jing Tan's chin, she hadn't touched this arm, so she hadn't noticed it. Moving closer and sniffing again, Jing Tan looked at the leopard cat that was growling more and more fiercely. Originally, Jing Tan had only wanted to slap it like last time to make it retreat, but he changed his mind at the last minute. When the leopard cat's growls suddenly changed, Jing Tan knew that it couldn't hold back anymore. Almost at the same time that the leopard cat pounced over, Jing Tan jumped up and dodged the sharp claws of the leopard cat. He didn't collide with it head-on, but instead gave it a claw. The claws pierced through the fur and scratched against the resistance of the flesh. The smell of blood wafted over. Jing Tan couldn't play with the combination of hugging, biting, kicking, and scratching like the sheriff and the other cats. He preferred simple and violent methods, like the slap last time and the claw this time. This time, he didn't hit the cat, but there was blood. When they landed, the two cats were very close to each other. On the leopard cat's body, there was a scratch from its neck to its abdomen. Jing Tan's claws were harder than the average cat's. In addition, Jing Tan intended to make the cat bleed, so he stabbed deeper. The disadvantage of short-haired cats was that they were easily scratched in a fight. Those with longer and thicker fur could use their fur to reduce some of the claw's attacks. At most, they would only be plucked. Jing Tan was prepared to attack again. If it weren't for the difference in size and the fact that he didn't jump too high, Jing Tan could have started from the cat's head instead of the neck. However, the leopard cat retreated quickly. After realizing Jing Tan's intention, it quickly jumped away and retreated in the direction of Anna. Although it was growling, it was much weaker. As the saying goes, a spurt of energy only to weaken the next. It had finally mustered up the courage to charge forward, but in the end, it suffered another claw. Now, it was beginning to feel afraid again. The leopard cat didn't have dark fur like Enchanting's. After the wound quickly oozed blood, the surrounding fur was dyed red. The wound was long, and blood had already dripped onto the carpet on the ground. Qin Tao and the others looked at this scene and their jaws almost fell to the ground. With such an obvious difference in size, the result of this round was completely different from what they had expected. Anna was about to throw the wine glass in her hand at Jingtan, but she was stopped by Mao. The door of the private room opened, and the people Qin Tao had asked for help came in. Sister Xia was at the front. With so many people watching, Jingtan didn't continue to chase. Otherwise, he would give the impression that he was a fierce and dangerous creature. Jingtan didn't want to make more people afraid of him because of this leopard cat. That wasn't necessarily a good thing. Even so, everyone felt their hair stand on end. This black cat didn't bare its teeth or growl, but its eyes were terrifying. Qin Tao felt a chill on his back. When the people brought by Sister Xia separated the two cats, Jingtan stopped attacking and squatted there with an obedient look. Until Anna took the leopard cat away, Jingtan jumped on the sofa and lay down next to Tang Kai. Mao lifted Jingtan up and looked at him. Jingtan's fur was too dark. Even if he was injured, it couldn't be seen. After checking, Mao and Tang Kai didn't find any wounds, only the claws were stained with blood. Tang Kai asked for a handkerchief and dipped it in some warm water to wipe Jingtan's claws. Jingtan let Tang Kai wipe the blood off his claws, thinking about something else. When they were fighting just now, they felt something strange, but they couldn't tell what it was. It seems that we didn't lose, Mao concluded. Qin Tao stood 1 meter away from Mao and Tang Kai. He didn't have the guts of Mao and Tang Kai. Earlier, he had observed the wounds on the leopard cat's body at close range. If the black cat's paw was a little bigger and its claws were a little longer, wouldn't it be able to directly cut open its stomach on the spot? Seeing that Jingtan wasn't injured, Mao was relieved. At the same time, he was glad that he didn't bring black rice this time. Otherwise, it would definitely be cannon fodder. Although black rice was fierce and aggressive, its fighting power was not enough compared to these two. This was also the first time that Mao found that Jingtan's fighting power was different from that of ordinary cats. It seemed that he had to keep black rice away from this black coal in the future. Aren't you afraid of it? Mao asked Tang Kai, who was wiping Jingtan's claws. Don't be afraid, it helped me take revenge. Tang Kai laughed. Her smile was not as arrogant as usual. It was much gentler. Mao didn't speak again. Qin Tao called him again. It was not easy to come to a birthday party. Qin Tao didn't want to waste it because of a fight between two cats. Besides, for other people, cats were just cats. They were purely for fun. Although they were a little surprised, they wouldn't pay too much attention after the surprise. They had to hurry up and achieve their purpose of coming here. After Mao was pulled away, a girl hesitated and came over. She was a relative of Tang Kai and was now interning in Tang Kai's father's company. Perhaps because she saw that Jingtan was gentle and didn't seem to be a threat, she sat down on the sofa next to him. Tang Kai liked to talk about cats. The girl obviously knew Tang Kai's preferences and talked about cats. When they were talking about Anna's cat being trained to squat on the toilet, Tang Kai suddenly asked, her cat was specially trained? Seeing that Tang Kai was interested, the girl was very happy. If she could please Tang Kai, she would have a smoother time when she became a full-time employee in the company. I heard that the cat was given to Anna by a relative during the New Year. However, this kind of big cat may have a bad temper. Anna's parents spent a lot of money to hire someone to train it. This cat is to be a pet, not to be used in the fighting field. If it was too rebellious, Anna wouldn't dare to bring it over. Oh, the squatting on the toilet was also trained at that time. That is to say, the cat won't attack people? Tang Kai lowered her head slightly so that the people next to her couldn't see her eyes. Yes, if not, Anna's parents wouldn't allow her to keep the big cat by her side all day. If she accidentally scratched it and disfigured it, who would she cry to? The girl replied. Since it wouldn't scratch people without permission, then why did the big cat stretch out its claws to her in the bathroom? Without Anna's guidance, was it possible? Tang Kai looked at the claw marks on her sleeves and didn't say anything. The people next to her couldn't see Tang Kai's eyes, but Jing Tan could see the anger in Tang Kai's eyes. If he wasn't by her side, Tang Kai's temper would probably explode again. Jing Tan suddenly thought of the reason why he felt strange before. Compared to before, the leopard cat's wildness had faded a lot. Could it be because it had been trained? Had its wild nature been ground down? If it was fierce, it would be even fiercer after it was injured and saw blood. Of course, this was just Jing Tan's guess. He didn't know the specific reason. At the end of the evening party, when Mao left with Jing Tan, Tang Kai was still reluctant to part with them. Mao asked Qin Tao to leave 2 pieces of cake for the 2 children of the Jiao family. However, Mao didn't mention that Jing Tan had scratched the cat in the fight. If he did, he wouldn't be able to invite the cat out next time. Besides, even if the people attending the party saw Jing Tan outside, they might not be able to recognize him. On Sunday, Tang Kai invited Qin Tao and Mao to have dinner. The reason she called Mao was that she wanted it to bring Jing Tan out. They just had dinner at a private restaurant that they often went to. After dinner, Mao took the initiative to invite them to the night building. It also invited a few people that it had met yesterday and had a good impression of. Jing Tan didn't go with them. He didn't inform them in advance. If he went back late, the Jiao Ma would nag him again. Jing Tan was sent to the school gate. He didn't continue to delay and trotted back to the eastern courtyard. At this time, there weren't many people on the road in the eastern courtyard. In another half an hour, the teachers from the evening class and the office working overtime would come back. Jing Tan was running. When he was about to reach the courtyard, he slowed down. There were 3 cats squatting in the middle of the road in front of him. Jing Tan had never seen these 3 cats in the area. They were complete strangers. As Jing Tan walked closer, the 3 cats still squatted in front of him and stared at Jing Tan. The orange street lamp elongated the shadows of the 3 cats. In the distance, someone's cat was moving and howling. However, the 3 cats only moved their ears, as if they weren't interested in that. It was as if they only heard the rustling of the leaves around them. They still squatted there steadily. Jing Tan was wondering where these 3 roadblocks came from when he suddenly heard a voice. Black charcoal? Chapter 183. Jing Tan looked in the direction of the voice. The street lights didn't interfere with Jing Tan's vision too much. After taking a closer look, he was sure that he had never seen this person before. The 3 cats blocking the way were obviously in cahoots with this man. But the question was, why did this man bring 3 cats here in the middle of the night? What was the meaning of this? It wasn't right to call it a gang fight, as there wasn't any murderous intent. Also, how did this person know his name? Although he didn't feel any hostility from this person and the 3 cats, Jing Tan still maintained a high level of vigilance. This person looked a little strange, and the 3 cats were also strange. They were different from the cats that Jing Tan usually interacted with. Jing Tan and the person looked at each other, and at the same time, wondered if he should just ignore them and run home. I've heard so much about you, the person said again. Jing Tan looked up. I've heard so much about you. Or can I call you Black Sea? The person's tone was very natural, as if they were chatting casually. The person said a few more words, but Jing Tan didn't want to pay attention to him, nor did he want to look into the person's eyes. He felt that the person seemed to be able to see something from his eyes, and Jing Tan was unhappy. Just as he was about to run away, he heard the person say, "Let's introduce ourselves first. Come, Longan, you start." As he said that, the person snapped his fingers. The serious-looking cat with a white body and a black tail in the middle let out a meow. Lotus Seed, the person said again. Meow. The dragonly cat that was squatting on the right side closest to the road meowed. This dragonly cat's fur color was the same as Depang's, but it was different from Depang's. This dragonly cat looked thinner and more obedient, unlike Depang, who didn't have enough sleep and was not interested in anything. Babeo, the person said. The cat that was squatting on the far left with its tail wagging, as if it was holding back its strength, opened its mouth. Meow, Jingtan was speechless. All right, Babeo, shut up. The man snapped his fingers, and the cat named Babeo immediately stopped. He glanced at the man and wagged his tail. Finally, let me introduce myself. My name is Ah Wu. The man lifted his hand to lift the brim of his hat and looked at Jingtan. When he was about to speak, he suddenly looked at the other side of the road. The ears of the three cats that were squatting at the same spot twitched. They were about to turn around to take a look when a figure dashed over. It jumped over the three cats that were blocking the way and pounced on the person called Ah Wu. Ah Wu dodged nimbly and looked at the cat that was baring its teeth and growling at him as if it was going to pounce on him again. Instead of getting angry, he smiled and said, "Hey, fatty, you live here?" Jingtan looked at Depang, who was growling at Ah Wu fiercely and whose fur was about to explode. He was surprised. He rarely saw Depang like this, except for the few times when he was a thief and a cat trafficker. Today was the only time he had seen Depang like this. However, he had never acted like this before, as if he was facing an enemy. Looking at Ah Wu and the three cats, and then looking at Depang, Jingtan was even more confused. Did they know each other? This guy called Ah Wu obviously knew Depang, and Depang only took the initiative to attack him once when he rushed over and growled at him vigilantly. TSK, I haven't seen you for more than a year, and you've gotten fatter. Ah Wu looked at Depang and did not care about Depang's threatening growl at all. He said slowly, "Haven't you had enough of the instant noodles?" Jingtan was surprised again. Not many people knew that Depang would be punished with instant noodles. Depang's old lady never told anyone about it. Since this guy knew about it, he must be an old friend of Depang. Forget it, today's purpose has been achieved. Black charcoal, now that we know each other, I will come to see you when I have time. After a pause, Ah Wu sighed and said, "Who on earth trained you to be like this? I really want to meet him." With that, the guy snapped his fingers again. Longan, Lotus Seed, Babeo, let's go. The three cats who were blocking the road quickly followed. The cat called Babeo was probably going to walk over and say hello to Depang, but Depang was still highly vigilant and stared at Ah Wu, who was leaving, ignoring Babeo. Jingtan glanced around, climbed up a sycamore tree, and looked at Ah Wu and the three cats who were leaving. The cat called Longan stood on the sidewalk and followed Ah Wu closely. Lotus Seed jumped on Ah Wu's shoulder and lay on it. From time to time, she stretched out her claws to hook Ah Wu's felt hat. As for Babeo, that guy was energetically using the falling leaves as imaginary enemies and fluttering around. What a strange combination. Depang did not continue to bark, but his ears were still slightly pressed back, his body slightly bent, and he stared in the direction Ah Wu left. Was this guy really scared? After Ah Wu was out of sight, Jingtan jumped down from the tree, raised his paw, and patted Depang, asking him to return to the courtyard. Just now, Depang probably ran out from the balcony because he heard the cat called Babeo. If Depang had an impression of them, it would make sense for him to follow the sound. Moreover, Babeo's cry was too special. Although it was not as loud as Jingtan's, it was still full of ups and downs. Because of the incident with Ah Wu, Jingtan went back and wondered who Ah Wu was the whole night. He knew Depang, and he specially came to find him. Why? The next day, Mao probably played too late last night and was still sleeping at home. Jingtan did not see him open the door. Depang was still lying on his balcony, but he looked a little paranoid. Jingtan was more curious about what happened to this guy that caused him to be in such a state when he saw Ah Wu last night. After dinner, Jingtan habitually walked outside. Now that the daytime was getting longer and the temperature was rising, many people would go out at night. Jingtan would also walk outside. The sun was hidden under the tall buildings, and the sky still had the afterglow of the sunset. Some people walked out of the courtyard one after another. Jing-tan moved his ears. The sheriff was outside fighting with the cats in the west courtyard again. He lifted his foot and was about to go over to check on the situation when he suddenly noticed something. Jing-tan turned his head and looked at the green bushes. The cat called Longan stood there and looked at Jing-tan. Jing-tan looked around and did not see the person called Ah Wu, nor did he see the other two cats. Longan walked towards Jing-tan and stopped half a meter away from Jing-tan. He looked at Jing-tan, then walked in a direction. After 2 steps, he turned back to look at Jing-tan, signaling for Jing-tan to follow. Jing-tan weighed the pros and cons in his heart, then lifted his foot and followed. Although he was not sure why Longan brought him there, as long as he was still at Tsinghua University, Jing-tan was not that worried. In his heart, Jing-tan had already regarded the Tsinghua University area as his own territory. Jing-tan was very familiar with the path that Longan was walking on. He usually walked this way too. There were fewer people here, and it was a more secluded path. There were trees on both sides, and there was a small bamboo forest in front. The bamboos that grew on both sides of the path gradually gathered together 3 meters above the ground, forming an arched doorway. Under this arched doorway, there was a long wooden bench that was commonly seen in schools. During the summer, people often came here to hide from the sun and rest during the day. There were also students who came here to practice guitar or memorize English words, but at night, it was indeed a little gloomy because the street lights could only illuminate a small area under the arched doorway. They could not illuminate the people sitting on the bench. Even with the afterglow of the sunset, people could not see the situation under the arched doorway. At this time, very few people came here. Longan brought Jing-tan here. An object flew out from the bottom of the arch, and at the same time, a shadow shot out from it. When it passed by Jing-tan and Gui Yuan, it did not seem to have any intention of stopping. In its eyes, there was only the object that was thrown out from the arch. Jing-tan recognized that it was Babeo that he saw yesterday. It jumped up and caught a small frisbee. Babeo ran towards the arched doorway with the frisbee in its mouth. When it passed by Jing-tan, it only glanced at him before continuing to run back. The person sitting on the bench under the arched doorway was Ah Wu. The dragonly cat, Lotus Seed, was lying on the side. When Longan came over, it jumped to Lotus Seed and squatted down seriously. "We meet again." Ah Wu greeted Jing-tan. Then, it took the frisbee that Babeo brought back. It patted Babeo's head and praised it. It raised its hand and threw the frisbee out. Babeo quickly turned around and ran out to catch the frisbee. This type of frisbee was smaller and softer, so it would not be too difficult for Babeo to catch it and it would not hurt its teeth. After throwing the frisbee, Ah Wu lowered its head and looked at Jing-tan, who was squatting 2 steps away. It patted the empty spot on the bench and said, "Come over and let's talk." Jing-tan did not move. He did not know anything about it. He would not stupidly walk so close to it. Ah Wu took out some food, but Jing-tan ignored it. After distributing the food in his hand to his 3 cats, Ah Wu patted the crumbs on his hands and looked at the black cat that was still standing there vigilantly. When he saw the black cat for the first time yesterday, he knew that he could not approach it in a normal way. So, he did not take out many things to tease the cat. Plus, Depang, the fatty, was there to stir things up, so he went back first. "Can you understand what I'm saying?" Ah Wu suddenly asked. Jing-tan turned his head to avoid looking at Ah Wu directly. "It seems that I can understand," Ah Wu said with some emotion. Although he looked calm on the surface, in his heart, Wu was much more excited. Anna's leopard cat was trained by him. Yesterday, he heard that the leopard cat was defeated by a black cat, which aroused his curiosity. After asking someone to investigate, he became even more interested. He also bought cat food for Black Sea to shoot an advertisement. In fact, he came here just to see how the cat was trained. Ah Wu did not think that the black cat was gifted. He only thought that it was the result of the training of an excellent cat trainer. As a cat trainer who thought that he was good, it was rare for Ah Wu to meet a worthy opponent. Ah Wu then said something and asked some questions. Jing Tan just stood there and did not show any reaction to Ah Wu's words. And Jing Tan was scared by Ah Wu's words. But Jing Tan decided to pretend that he did not know anything. No matter what Ah Wu said, he would pretend that he did not understand anything. After Ah Wu talked to himself for a while, he remained silent for 2 minutes. Then, he threw the frisbee that Ba Bao brought back and said calmly, "When I was young, I saw my master scolding his cat. However, his cat looked innocent and confused. So, I told my master, they don't understand anyway. It's a waste of your saliva to say so much." My master sneered and said, "It understands. It may even understand every word I just said. It has already recorded it in its mind. It is just pretending that it does not know anything." Chapter 184. No matter what Ah Wu said, even if he pointed it out, Jing Tan decided to play along until the end. After all, he was just a cat now. Besides, Jing Tan didn't have a good impression of Ah Wu. Jing Tan always felt uncomfortable here. Therefore, just as Ah Wu was feeling proud, Jing Tan turned around and left without looking back. Ignoring Ah Wu's shouts, Jing Tan quickened his pace and ran towards the eastern courtyard. The next time he saw the 3 cats, he would ignore them. Jing Tan was not afraid of Ah Wu spouting nonsense. Even if Ah Wu did, no one would believe him. Even if they did, they would not believe him completely. After all, many intelligent animals that had lived with humans for a long time could understand some simple sentences. Jing Tan kept a low profile in front of most people. Those who knew about Jing Tan would not betray him, so what was there to be afraid of? On Friday night, Celestine drove over to take Jing Tan and Mao to the night building. Walnut, who hadn't been seen for a long time, happened to be free today. The 3 of them gathered together, and Jing Tan hitched a ride. The 3 of them were very casual, unlike the people Jing Tan had seen at the birthday banquet last time. They wore masks and acted carefully. When the 3 of them were peeling peanuts, they very consciously peeled some for Jing Tan's plate. Therefore, Jing Tan only needed to sit down and wait to eat. She listened to the live performance outside, and when she was full, she would lie on the sofa and take a nap. However, when Jing Tan heard Celestine and the other 2 talking about cat trainers, his sleepiness suddenly disappeared. The conversation started with the case that Walnut had mentioned that was under investigation. In fact, there were some theft cases before the new year, but everyone thought that it was probably because the new year was approaching, and that all the bad guys came out to get some New Year's money. Many people heard about it and didn't really take it to heart. In the past, this kind of thing was common, and Walnut and the others attributed the reason to some people with criminal records. Those people were just fined or thrown in jail for a while after being caught, which was not a big deal. However, after the new year, the number of people reporting cases continued to increase. The number was much higher than the same period in previous years. If it wasn't a coincidence, Walnut Sr. would only think that it was because those who had left a criminal record were getting restless. Cat. Mao was so surprised that he dropped the peanuts he was peeling. Yes, there's a bookstore opposite the owner's house. Although it's not big, the owner of the bookstore has some money. Because he hasn't been feeling well recently, he can't be bothered to keep an eye on the people in the store, so he installed some cameras. There's also one at the entrance of the store, but it's not too eye-catching. It's just been installed a few days ago, so many people around don't know about it. One of my men was just lucky at the time. After seeing it, he asked the shop owner for the latest surveillance video. As he spoke, Walnut took out a photo. Jing Tan leaned forward to take a look. The surveillance footage wasn't very good, and it couldn't be compared to the surveillance cameras of banks and some large companies. However, he could indeed see a blurry figure in this photo. There was an object in front of it, which should be the stolen item. With this size and agility, it could only be a cat. I suppressed this matter and didn't spread it. The owner of the bookstore doesn't know about it either. The image was very short and dark. If you don't look carefully, no one will pay attention to a cat. Walnut Sr. continued to talk about his suspicions. He felt that some of the reported crimes were committed by cats, and even if cats were smart, they wouldn't be like Jingtan, unless they were specially trained. When Jingtan saw this photo, he immediately thought of Ah Wu. Could it be him? However, the cat in the photo didn't look like one of the three cats, Longan, Lotus Seed, or Babeo. Just as Jingtan was puzzled, Walnut Sr. also mentioned Ah Wu's name. It turned out that Ah Wu had accepted a job and came to Chuhua City. Originally, Ah Wu had only planned to stay in Chuhua City for a while and leave after completing the job. He didn't expect to be found by the police. The job he accepted was probably to train the leopard cat. He is indeed one of the suspects. However, although Ah Wu hasn't been cleared of suspicion, he seems to be very interested in this matter and offered to assist in the investigation. Of course, he hasn't been cleared yet, and we haven't really told him about the progress of the investigation. Until now, he is still in Chuhua City. Most of the time, we can't find him, and the people who were sent to follow him were also shaken off by him. However, he has been taking 3 cats with him, and they are very distinctive. He only comes out at night, and... After a pause, Walnut Sr. sighed. I don't think it was Ah Wu who instigated the cat theft. He is a bit arrogant and doesn't lack money. I asked someone to investigate his income, and it makes me want to learn how to train cats. The second half of the sentence was obviously a joke. There were many people who trained dogs, but very few who trained cats. Cats had bad tempers. Otherwise, cats were the only domesticated animals that humans hadn't completely conquered. How many years had it been since cats entered human society? As Jingtan was thinking, he also paid attention to the conversation between Walnut Sr. and the others. I once asked Ah Wu, and he said that there are indeed some cats who have a hobby of stealing, and they prefer to find some cats with special talents to train and stimulate their strengths. The cat that stole was probably trained by someone who was interested in cat training. That cat trainer called Ah Wu, doesn't he know the cat trainers in this province? Then he should be considered someone in their circle, Mao Er asked. Walnut Sr. shook his head, and then said with an unnatural expression, I also called the master to ask. Hearing this, Celestine and Mao Er looked at Walnut Sr. with a look that said, You're asking for trouble. The master doesn't seem to have a good impression of cat trainers, and he also said that at most, he is teaching and guiding Mountain, and not trying to force Mountain to correct some of his bad temperaments, Walnut said. That's for sure. Mountain's bad temperament is definitely not trained. Mao Er sneered. Mountain's bad temperament was definitely learned from the people around him in his daily life, especially the master. Celestine didn't say anything, but when he heard Walnut ask about the master's cat trainers, he curled his lips, probably saying bad things in his heart. Mao Er peeled 2 peanuts and threw them into his mouth. I will pay attention to the surroundings and see which cat is more suspicious, but I don't want to meet that cat called Ah Wu. Recently, Mao Er would take Black Rice out for a walk, but he didn't want the cat trainers to see his cat. He felt that his Black Rice was the kind of cat that Walnut Sr. had said was talented and smart, so he had to protect it well. Cat trainers? Who knew what they would do? Then you can rest assured that Ah Wu won't go to Chuhua University, at least not in the near future, Walnut Sr. said. Why? This time, even Celestine was curious. Walnut smiled. That fat cat called Depang, its father, went to find Ah Wu 2 days ago and warned him not to go near Chuhua University. Also, more than a year ago, Depang's cat father seemed to be one of the reasons why Ah Wu left Chuhua City. Depang's cat father? Mao Er was confused, and then suddenly understood. Then he began to sigh. These days, cats were more arrogant than people. Because of his father's heavy responsibility, Mao Er had done some research on some of the big shots in the province. When he rented the house in the eastern courtyard, he had done some research on the residents, especially the residents in Building B. Celestine had specially mentioned the fat Dragon Lee's family. At that time, Mao Er had sighed that this seemingly ordinary courtyard was full of hidden talents, so he often helped Depang's old lady to move things and earn some favor. Jingtan was thinking, no wonder he hadn't seen Ah Wu at Chuhua University since that day. Jingtan thought that Ah Wu had given up on provoking him, but now it seemed that it was Depang's cat father's credit. Thinking of this, Jingtian couldn't help but sigh in his heart again. This was an era where people relied on their fathers. Even cats joined in. In fact, when Walnut Sr. had heard the reason from Ah Wu, he had also sighed with emotion. These days, many cats were indeed more arrogant than humans. For example, Fatty, and the black cat in front of him, who knew what it was thinking with its head down. After learning the reason why Ah Wu stayed in Chuhua City from Walnut Sr., Jingtian also paid attention to the surroundings to see if there were any strange and suspicious cats. After a comfortable weekend, early on Monday morning, Jingtian was picked up from the Jiao family by Xiao Guo. There was a task today. As the vice president of the Green Wings Association, Xiao Guo was to take the pet center's advertising team out to shoot a public service advertisement to help the Green Wings Association feel its existence and increase its influence within the association. Jingtian was undoubtedly Xiao Guo's trump card. Today, they chose a place with good scenery that was 30 minutes drive away from Chuhua University. It was close to a lake. As they had informed the person in charge here, they had surrounded the area in advance. When Jingtian arrived, he saw that a lot of things were ready. The public service advertisement to be shot today was to tell people about the dangers of chocolate and some strong stimulants to pets. And there were some difficult scenes, such as pretending to faint, pretending to vomit, and so on. Among the cats, only Jingtian could take the lead, and the rest of Xiao Guo's pet center were responsible for acting cute. From Jingtian's point of view, these advertisements were very childish and relatively rough, but after all, it was only a pet public service advertisement. People's tolerance for pets on the screen was always much greater than people's. However, adhering to the principle of professionalism, Jingtian also added a few scenes of himself twitching a few times during the shooting. It scared the filming crew so much that their faces turned pale and they broke out in a cold sweat. They were afraid that the fake scene would become real, or else Xiao Guo would directly fire them. Everyone knew that boss Xiao Guo regarded this black cat as the fortune cat of the entire pet center. It was not to be provoked or hurt. In general, it was as smooth as usual when shooting advertisements at the pet center, so Jingtian's side was quickly finished, and the people responsible for the pet dog's side were only 1/3 of the way through. The working group still had to continue here. Xiao Guo, the vice president, was very busy. After coming here, there was no sign of him. No one knew who he was negotiating with. The person who was entrusted by Xiao Guo to take care of Jingtian was a young man in his early 20s named Charlie. It was a pity that Jingtian was not a girl. Charlie was definitely a native, but because of his name, his surname, Charlie, was often mispronounced. He was poached by Xiao Guo from Agricultural University this year. He majored in animal medicine and was about to graduate. Recently, he had been doing an internship at the pet center. Today, he was called over to help. Charlie was in charge of taking care of Jingtian. Little Guo had already told Charlie about the things he had to pay attention to. For example, the disposable paper cups used to hold water had to be clean and unused, and the food should not contain cat biscuits or cat food. When Charlie first saw the food given to Jingtian, he had warned her about the dangers. However, he later realized that this cat was indeed unique, so he did not mention it. Today, he would not mention it either. Moreover, he had to do it discreetly. This went against the public service advertisement that day. Charlie was not experienced enough, so he felt a little guilty. Jingtian did not want to stay here all the time and was ready to go out for a walk. Charlie had just been called over to help, and no one in the rest area was watching Jingtian. It was not easy to come here, so it was good to see the scenery. Coming out from under the cloth fence, Jingtian saw a small pine forest and was ready to walk over. As soon as he walked into the pine forest, he heard a sound. When he looked over, Jingtian saw a yellow figure flash by. However, after noticing Jingtian's existence, the other party paused for a short time, looked at Jingtian, and then quickly left. It was a cat that looked very similar to Huang, but Huang did not have such sharp eyes. Chapter 185. The cat quickly disappeared into the pine forest, and Jingtian didn't plan to chase it. Catching thieves was the police's job, and it was Walnut's job. Jing Tan wasn't in the mood to meddle in other people's business. Compared to the central city, the air here was much better. There was a large green forest around, plus a lake. There wasn't much sewage and laboratory wastewater, so the environmental quality was immediately improved. No wonder many people liked to come here to relax. Xiaoguo didn't choose this place for no reason. Even if it was a pet public service announcement, it had to be carefully packaged, right? Otherwise, Xiaoguo, the vice president, wouldn't feel good. As he walked and thought, Jing Tan heard Charlie shouting over there. He probably found that Jing Tan wasn't there and was anxious. Charlie was very regretful now. He thought that it would be fine to leave for only 5 minutes, but when he came back, he didn't see Jing Tan's shadow. If he lost this cat, Charlie wouldn't be able to survive in Chuhua City in the future. Boss Xiaoguo would never let him go. While Charlie and a few people in the group were anxiously looking for Jing Tan slowly walked out of the pine forest. Seeing that the cat wasn't lost, Charlie and the others were relieved and no longer left Jing Tan's surroundings. Even if the others were busy, they wouldn't ask Charlie to help. Otherwise, if they lost the cat, they would be one of the sinners of the pet center. Being stared at like this, Jing Tan couldn't be in the mood to go anywhere. He lay down and took a nap, waiting for the pet dog's shooting to end before he went back. He went straight back to the pet center. Jing Tan had to wait at the pet center for a while. Xiaoguo was busy with a few urgent matters at hand and then sent Jing Tan back to the courtyard. Xiaoguo wouldn't be at ease if he didn't send him back personally. During this time, Jing Tan and the few pets that went out for the shooting would be checked together. This was a new rule made by Xiaoguo to prevent cats and dogs from being infected with certain germs outside and bringing them into the pet center to infect more pets. If the pets were unwell, they could be found in advance. After all, pets weren't humans. Not everyone knew how to express their discomfort. When Jing Tan was being checked, he saw a familiar face next door. Sahara's dog father had brought it over for an injection. Sahara was probably a little sick. During the injection, it buried its head in its father's arms and whined like a spoiled child. Jing Tan strongly despised him. F***ck, wasn't it just poking a needle? Where did the courage that he usually had go? Back in the eastern courtyard, Jing Tan looked at the wall clock in the living room. It was only 3:00 in the afternoon. He turned on the computer and did some research. He found some cat friends on the forum complaining that some cats like to go to other people's houses to pick up things. Someone also posted a video link. It was a video that the cat friend had secretly taken of his cat bringing back a stuffed animal from God knows where in the middle of the night. If a cat with such talent was trained by those cat trainers, what would it become? Jing Tan couldn't figure it out. He thought about the cat he saw today. He didn't dare to say anything else, but the person who trained the cat definitely didn't lack money. In the forum, someone who studied law replied, if it's just an animal stealing, it's an animal's instinct and not a crime. However, the animal's breeder or owner should bear the obligation to compensate for the loss of other people's property due to poor management of the animal. If the animal is professionally trained and steals, it's still not a crime for the animal. However, for the person who instigated the animal, it's a classic case of using the animal as a tool to steal and secretly stealing other people's property. This constitutes theft in the criminal law. There were too many similar discussions. However, in real life, there were more and more people who took advantage of loopholes. However, Jing Tan was just curious. As long as it didn't happen to him or his Jiao family, Jing Tan didn't bother to spend too much time on it. After turning off the computer and erasing some of the more obvious traces, Jing Tan went to the balcony. As soon as he walked out, he heard the bird on the 4th floor singing again. Jing Tan didn't know why that B***tch bird was so addicted to singing these days, but he really didn't want to suffer here. He really didn't know how the other people in the building endured it. Maybe the old men and women in the building liked this kind of music. Jing Tan slept outside for a long time and couldn't stay idle at home. In the end, he decided to go out for a walk and pick up little Pomelo when he came back. Jing Tan hadn't been to the construction site for a long time, so he decided to take a look. He walked past Jiao Yuan's school. The teachers in Jiao Yuan were on the podium talking about the shortcomings of their country's education and criticizing examination-oriented education. Zheng Tan wagged his tail. He was too lazy to listen to these kinds of words. What was the use of just talking about it? He continued to trot forward. The construction site was still surrounded by blue buildings, but the building that was built inside could not be blocked. The progress was not bad. He hoped that this place could be completed soon and Zheng Tan would have another place for entertainment. As he was looking, Zheng Tan suddenly heard someone calling his name. He turned his head and saw Zhong Yan, who he hadn't seen for a while, walking over with a bunch of unknown things in his hands. Zheng Tan didn't expect to meet Zhong Yan at this time today. Looking at the time, it seemed that this child was indeed on his monthly break. Before every break in the third year of high school, there was a mock exam. However, Zhong Yan didn't look like he was under too much pressure. "Hey, why are you here today?" Zhong Yan walked to the side. He had originally planned to rest at the side and didn't expect to see Zheng Tan first. Zhong Yan went into the temporary rest area to get some water. He found a place to sit down, drank 2 mouthfuls of water, and handed another disposable plastic cup to Zheng Tan. Then he talked to Zheng Tan about something. "Do you know, a cat came to the construction site recently. It looks like you and is also completely black. At first, Brother Ning and others thought it was you. They served it with good food and drinks, but in the end, I recognized it." Zhong Yan was quite proud when he talked about this. That black cat usually comes at night and leaves after walking around. Brother Ning and others said that there was probably a mouse at the construction site that attracted the cat. But I think that cat doesn't look like a stray cat. That black cat is very vigilant and fierce. Brother Ning and others were scratched when they played with it. I heard that someone at the construction site wanted to trap the cat and cook it after knowing that it wasn't you, but he didn't succeed. Zheng Tan didn't take it seriously at first. It was just a cat that looked like him. It was no big deal. There were many black cats. However, Zhong Yan's next sentence made Zheng Tan's heart tremble. Speaking of which, something happened at the construction site recently. Several people's wallets were missing. I heard that they were drunk and didn't pay attention. It's estimated that someone took them. Now everyone hides their wallets well. Alas, the construction site is like this. It's very messy. Zhong Yan sighed. Zheng Tan didn't know if he was overthinking. When Zhong Yan talked about this, the first thing that came to his mind was that the black cat was related to the missing wallets. Maybe he was overthinking. After listening to the conversation of Brother Walnut and others that day and seeing a cat steal wallets, Zheng Tan now thought that it might be a cat that stole wallets. Moreover, Zhong Yan just said that a black cat that looked like him often came here. Whether he was overthinking or not, Zheng Tan decided to be careful. That cat looked like him. If it really stole things like the cat he saw in the morning, and it was seen doing bad things, wouldn't he be blamed for it? Zheng Tan absolutely didn't want to be the scapegoat. In order to prevent accidents, Zheng Tan decided to be vigilant of other black cats. Zhong Yan quickly returned to the construction site to work. Zheng Tan also walked back. At the same time, he also paid attention to the cats around him. He didn't find a black cat like him. It probably wasn't time yet, so the cat didn't come out. That day, after dinner, Jiaoma was called by her colleagues to dance in the school square. The temperature wasn't low now, so they didn't stay in the gymnasium. They went directly to the square to dance. There were quite a few teachers there. Zheng Tan saw that the sheriff was fighting with the cats in the western compound. He followed them all the way to the square and thought that he might as well go find Jiaoma later. Although Jiaoma was on the square, Jiaoma had acquaintances in the gymnasium. Her bags and cups were all in the cabinet in the gymnasium. Zheng Tan just had to wait at the entrance of the gymnasium. Zheng Tan was about to walk in that direction when suddenly, a shadow ran across the road from not far in front of him. The shadow ran from the left near the square to the green belt on the right. Stopping, Zheng Tan paused for 2 seconds, then turned and followed the shadow. Jing Tan heard the rustling sound coming from the small forest. It was the sound of something running in the forest and rubbing against the ryegrass on the ground. Although it was night time, Jing Tan could see the situation in the small forest with the help of the surrounding street lights. However, the growing ryegrass and some trees in the forest obstructed Jing Tan's vision. Fortunately, the trees here were thick enough and the spacing was just right. Therefore, Jing Tan directly jumped on a tree and ran through the mountain of branches. This skill wasn't practiced for nothing. Intuition was sometimes very accurate. Jing Tan saw a cat in the ryegrass not far in front of him. The cat raised its head and let Jing Tan see the wallet in its mouth. However, he couldn't see what color the cat was, so he didn't know if it was the black cat that Zhong Yan mentioned. Jing Tan didn't expect to encounter this kind of thing again so soon. Although it was none of his business, he didn't want to be slandered. Regardless of whether it was the black cat that looked like him, Jing Tan decided to beat it up first. Besides, Jing Tan had taken Chuhua University as his own territory. If he didn't teach it a lesson, Jing Tan wouldn't be able to say that he was the boss here. The sound of Jing Tan jumping on the branches was also heard by the cat. It sped up a little, but it didn't seem to be in a hurry. It probably felt that a cat wasn't as threatening as a human. After approaching the cat from above, Jing Tan jumped down, pounced on it, and directly clawed at it. The cat was slapped to the side and rolled twice. The wallet in its mouth also fell into the ryegrass. After it got up, it angrily growled at Jing Tan a few times. It seemed like it wanted to fight with him, but it quickly ran away. Jing Tan wanted to continue chasing, but at this time, the sheriff and the cat from the western compound were fighting all the way here. When the sheriff saw Jing Tan, he happily ran over to greet him and interrupted Jing Tan for a while. Without the burden of the purse, the cat ran away quickly and soon disappeared out of the forest. The sheriff didn't realize that he had done something wrong. After being slapped by Jing Tan, he was still a little stunned. However, he quickly continued to fight with the cat from the western compound. They fought all the way out of the small forest. Chapter 186. Jing Tan was the only one left in the woods. Just as he was about to leave, Jing Tan remembered that the stolen wallet was still in the grass. He ran over to take a look. Since it was very dark, no one would pay attention to him. Jing Tan simply stood up, picked up the wallet with his two front paws, and slowly walked to the edge of the woods. Jing Tan didn't want to take the wallet for himself, nor was he interested in opening it to see what was inside. Although he didn't take a closer look at the wallet, he could tell from the fragrance that it was a woman's wallet. As one of the greening plants on campus, although the effect of the ryegrass was good, Jing Tan didn't like to move around in the grass. The feeling of the grass scraping against his body was very uncomfortable. Jing Tan looked around. There weren't many people walking on the path beside the small woods at this time. When Jing Tan walked to the edge, he happened to see an old man who was guarding the door of the teaching building, holding a radio and humming opera songs as he passed by. When he was wandering around the school, Jing Tan also identified the gatekeepers of the teaching buildings and departments. Although he didn't know what the old man's character was like, Jing Tan just wanted to quickly get rid of the wallet in his hand. While the old man was humming and shaking his head and not paying attention, Jing Tan threw the wallet in the old man's path, then returned to the woods and climbed up a tree to look over there. The old man probably just went out for a walk. After he picked up the wallet, he mumbled something. He looked around and didn't see anyone nearby, so he walked towards the square. Jing Tan followed not far behind him. He saw the old man walk to the gate of the stadium next to the square. He came to the bulletin board and wrote "Lost and Found" with a pen, then talked to the security guard there. After dealing with the wallet, Jing Tan squatted on a decorative stone platform at the gate of the stadium. "Hey, what's up with that cat?" The old man pointed at Jing Tan, wondering why there was a cat sitting there so calmly. It must be known that the square was very lively, and the sound of music could be heard from here. The entrance of the gymnasium was also crowded with students and teachers who came here to exercise and relax, but this cat was not afraid at all. The security guard at the door looked back and said, "It's Ms. Gu's cat. It's waiting for Ms. Gu to finish her dance." This piqued the old man's interest. He pulled the security guard aside and told him about Jingtan until Jiao Ma finished her dance and came over to get her bag and cup. Jiao Ma was very proud when she heard other people praise her cat. That night, when she brought Jingtan home, the smile on her face never disappeared. Jingtan did not take these compliments to heart. He was thinking about the cat. Ever since he found out that the cat thief had put its claws into Tsinghua University, Jingtan had been vigilant for the next few days. When he went out in circles, he also paid attention to the cats he did not know. However, the cat that was scratched by him did not appear again. That day, because the weather forecast said that it would rain at night, but he did not know when it would rain, Jingtan stayed at home after dinner. However, he felt a little restless. Jingtan looked at the darkening sky outside. It seemed to be getting dark earlier than 2 days ago. It was probably because of the weather that the clouds covered the sunset. After enjoying the breeze on the balcony for a while, Jingtan returned to the living room. He lay on the sofa and watched cartoons with little Pomelo. Jiao Ma was washing the dishes, and Jiao Yuan was playing on the computer in the room. At around 10 o'clock at night, it started to rain. Soon, the sound of raindrops hitting the window could be heard, and thunder rumbled. Jingtan nestled next to little Pomelo and was thinking about something in a daze. His ears twitched, and he heard the sound of the phone ringing in the master bedroom. Who would call in this kind of weather? Did they not know that it was dangerous? Although the buildings here were all equipped with lightning rods, it could not guarantee 100% safety. Because of the thunder and rain outside, Jingtan did not hear what Jiao Ma said on the phone. After waiting for a while, he did not hear any sound from Jiao Ma's side. He guessed that she was probably asleep. Jingtan lifted his paw and rubbed his ears. Then, he crawled under the blanket and began to sleep. Jingtan did not sleep well that night. For some reason, he could not sleep well. When he woke up early in the morning to eat breakfast, Jiao Ma asked Jingtan, "Where's black charcoal? Do you know where the sheriff went?" Jingtan was about to eat the egg in his bowl when he heard Jiao Ma's words. His heart skipped a beat. Although the sheriff liked to go out and visit people, he always came home on time. He rarely stayed out for a whole night. Also, the weather last night was like that. According to his usual habits, he should have come home early. Seeing that her cat was staring at her blankly, Jiao Ma sighed in her heart. She felt that her cat probably did not understand what she meant, so she did not say anything more. When Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo asked, Jiao Ma did not say much. She only told the two children to focus on their studies and not worry about other things. Jingtan did not have much of an appetite. No wonder he had a bad feeling since yesterday. Afraid that Jiao Ma would notice something, Jingtan forced himself to swallow the egg and noodles in the bowl. He had to eat to have the energy to go out and do things. Before they left, Jiao Ma reminded Jingtan to go home after he dropped off little Pomelo and not to run around. Jiao Ma wanted to keep her cat at home, but unfortunately, she could not. In the end, it was Jiao Pa's fault. He gave the cat the key to the front door and the access card. Which cat would have these things? Jiao Ma could not tell anyone about these troubles. Just like Jiao Pa said, it was not a good thing to stand out too much. Sigh, it was not easy to have a cat that was too smart at home. After Jingtan dropped off little Pomelo, he wandered around, looking for places where the gossipy aunties gathered to eavesdrop. It did not take Jingtan long to learn the reason why Jiao Ma had asked him that during breakfast from a few aunties who had just come back from grocery shopping. At around 9 o'clock last night, a teacher in the western compound found her cat seriously injured on the side of the road. There were scratches and bites all over its body, and its fur was covered in blood. The teacher turned on the flashlight and found that the blood extended from the side of the road into the forest. It seemed that her cat had crawled out of the forest. She hurriedly sent the cat to the 24-hour outpatient department at the pet center. After checking the injuries and making sure that the cat was not in any danger, the teacher was relieved. If her cat had not been lucky enough to run into her, it would have been dead by the time it rained for another half an hour. After settling her cat down, the teacher was filled with anger. The vet had said that the injuries on her cat were caused by the cat's scratches and bites. Usually, the only cat that was at odds with her cat was the sheriff in the east courtyard. It was fine if they fought in the past, since both of them had minor injuries, but this time, it was too much. Therefore, the teacher went to the sheriff's house to ask for an explanation. However, the sheriff did not come back, even when it started to rain. Now, the sheriff's owner also realized that something was wrong. It was common for cats to get scratches when they fought outside. The sheriff's owner was used to it, but his cat had always been in good spirits. Even if it went out to play at night, it would come home on time. Usually, at 9 or 10 o'clock, it would bark at the door of the family building, asking the owner to open the door. The peak period for missing cats during Chinese New Year had passed. Because of this, the sheriff's owner did not take it to heart. Who knew that something like this would happen? Everyone guessed that another cat had entered the school. Since the cat's claws were so fierce, it could not be a cat from the school. Otherwise, how could the school have been so quiet before? After learning the whole story, Jingtan was also worried. No wonder the sheriff's owner called everywhere to ask for help when it was so late last night. It was said that he even went out in the rain to look for the cat. It was past 12 o'clock, but he could not find the cat. This morning, when the rain stopped, the sheriff did not come back. The sheriff's owner also went to the school security office to ask for the surveillance video. The surveillance cameras in the school were not just for decoration, but the places with cameras were crowded and frequented, not the areas where cats were active. Many people said in private that the sheriff might not be able to come back. Zheng Tan felt that this matter had something to do with the cat that had been scratched by him. When the cat left, it growled and looked at him. He could tell that it was not a kind cat. Moreover, Zheng Tan guessed that there should be more than one cat. If there was only one cat, the cat in the west side courtyard would not have been injured so badly and almost died. The sheriff was still nowhere to be seen. These two cats were considered experts in the east and west side courtyard. Ordinary cats could not do anything to them. The rain last night washed away some of the scents, so it was impossible for Zheng Tan to find any suspicious scents. If the sheriff was only caught by the mastermind of the cat thief, the cat trainer that he had not met yet, he should at least be safe for the time being. Walnut had said that cat trainers would be interested in talented cats. The sheriff was indeed talented. A cat that could roar in the Chihuahua language so fluently was a wonder among cats. But if the cat trainer didn't discover the sheriff's talent and allowed his cat to kill the sheriff, Zheng Tan searched several green forest areas, which were also the places where the sheriff often fought. In a nearby forest where the cat in the west side courtyard was found, Zheng Tan smelled some scents. There were the scents of the sheriff, the cat in the west side courtyard, the cat that he had scratched, and at least 3 other unfamiliar cat scents. Unfortunately, he could not find anything else outside the forest. If only it had not rained last night. After a round of searching, Zheng Tan leaned against a large sycamore tree and panted in frustration. Although the sheriff was just a cat, ever since Zheng Tan had turned into a cat, the 4 scumbags of the east side courtyard could be considered a small group. The sheriff was also regarded by Zheng Tan as an important playmate and a cat brother. Now that her brother was in trouble, Zheng Tan could not stay calm. Her worry overshadowed her anger. Even when she searched through the woods, Zheng Tan's heart was in her throat. She was afraid that she would see a cat with a stiff body in the woods. Scratching his ears in annoyance, Xian swung his tail on a thick branch, making a sound. On the bright side, if the sheriff had not been caught, or if he had not been injured to the point that he could not run, or if he had found a chance to escape when he was attacked, where would he hide? Although the sheriff was not very smart, he was not stupid. The swinging of his tail gradually decreased, and the tip of his tail moved rhythmically. Zheng Tan thought about the possible hiding places of the sheriff. The sheriff was also active in the campus, so he should be familiar with the place. Zheng Tan began to think about the possible hiding places one by one. Suddenly, Zheng Tan thought of a place that the sheriff often went to, the old tiled housing area in the campus. When the weather was good, it was a small gathering place for cats. Chapter 187. Because it had just rained, the old tile-roofed housing area was damp. Zheng Tan didn't see a single cat when he came over. It really wasn't a good day to take a nap on the roof. After getting the car, Zheng Tan didn't come here as often. Occasionally, he would take a stroll to see Jiao Wei and the others play with their model cars and planes. Jumping onto a relatively tall tree, Zheng Tan looked around the area and excluded the few tile-roofed houses that were often occupied by students. But before that, Zheng Tan took a deep breath. "A woo," he howled a few times in a row. The few cats in the east courtyard knew his howls. If the sheriff was here, it would be best if he could hear it and run out. Although the possibility wasn't high, it was still worth a try. After he finished howling, he didn't hear the sheriff's response. Instead, a few students who were holding some kind of activity in a tile-roofed house pushed open the window and cursed. F***ck, which psycho is howling in the middle of the day? They only thought that it was someone who was bored or playing a prank. They didn't associate it with a cat at all. Zheng Tan didn't have time to argue with those students. He didn't see the sheriff, nor did he hear its howls. It was either because it wasn't here, or it couldn't hear, or it couldn't move. It was 50-50. If there was a possibility, he had to try. And he had to hurry. With the cat in the west courtyard injured, Zheng Tan didn't dare to wait any longer. Although the rain washed away a lot of the smell on the ground, he could still smell something when he was near the old tile-roofed houses. After eliminating some parts, Zheng Tan began to search one by one. The black figure moved among the old tile-roofed houses. From time to time, it would stop at some windowsills or doors with holes, rust, and cracks that hadn't been opened for a long time. Then, it would immediately run to the next tile-roofed house. When he found the 8th tile-roofed house, Zheng Tan found some bloodstains at the door. The ones further away were probably washed away by the rain, but there were obvious bloody cat footprints at the door. Zheng Tan sniffed. It was indeed the sheriff, but the doors and windows of this tile-roofed house were too tightly shut. The sheriff should have only stayed here for a short while before leaving. However, following these sporadic bloodstains and faint smells, Zheng Tan found another tile-roofed house not far from here. The door of this tile-roofed house was a wooden door. There was a gap in the lower right corner of the door. There was blood around the gap. Judging from the smell, it was the sheriff. Zheng Tan gave it a try and was able to squeeze through the gap. There were some old tables, chairs, and cabinets in the old tiled house. They were probably discarded from the cafeteria and some teaching buildings. They had been locked here for a long time and had not been touched for a long time. They were covered in dust, and there were many cobwebs in the corners. Moving his nose, Zheng Tan followed the smell and found the sheriff lying under a table. Zheng Tan did not know what the wounds on the cat in the west side courtyard looked like, but he could tell from the sheriff's body that the fight last night was very fierce. What made Zheng Tan relieved was that the sheriff was still alive, but his condition was not very good. He raised his paw and gently pushed the sheriff. There was no response, but his ears moved slightly. Next to the sheriff, there was a rat with a broken body. It looked quite fresh. It probably bumped into the sheriff's mouth last night. It was only because it had replenished some energy that the sheriff was able to maintain his current condition. It seemed that the sheriff could not move around on his own. Zheng Tan could move him out, but he could not carry the sheriff all the way to the pet center, right? Not to mention the headlines, it would take a lot of time to carry him all the way to the pet center. Also, he did not know if the sheriff could be moved around in his current condition. He had to find someone to help him. Zheng Tan moved the sheriff out a little. The gap in the door was still too small, and Zheng Tan could not move the sheriff out in this small gap. After jumping out and looking around to make sure that there was no one around the tiled house, Zheng Tan jumped up and lifted his foot to kick the door. He did not kick at the door lock, but at the gap. After a kick, a piece of wood fell from the gap, and the hole became bigger. He moved the sheriff to the side of the door, but did not move him out. The wind outside was a little strong. Zheng Tan did not know if this guy could be exposed to the wind now, so he left him behind the door to be safe. He checked the sheriff's condition again. His breathing was not strong, but it was not bad either. He had just made a slight sound, but he was still not very awake. He still had to hurry and send him to the pet center for treatment. After Jingtan came out of the door, he ran to the building of the Institute of Biological Sciences. At this time, Jiao Wei was in class, Jiao Ma was at work, and Mao was not at home. Recently, he had been very active. After thinking about it, the best thing to do was to go to the Institute of Biological Sciences to find a nanny. Xian copied the organized slides into a USB flash drive in Jiao Pa's office. She picked up the printed materials, got up, and was about to go to the conference room. There was a report, and today, the dean came to personally host it. As soon as her hand touched the door, Xian heard the sound of the window opening. She turned around and saw the boss's black cat jump in. Before Associate Professor Jiao went abroad, he had a meeting with his graduate students and told them about some unexpected situations at home. Among the graduate students, Xian was the one who knew Jingtan's habits the best. Therefore, when Jingtan stretched out his paw and pulled his trousers out, Xian felt that something must have happened. When Jingtan was carrying the sheriff, there were some bloodstains on his clothes, which scared Xian. For a moment, she forgot to call Jiao Ma and ask for details. Seeing Jingtan running out of the window, she quickly put down the things in her hands and rushed out of the building. Jingtan, who was waiting outside, soon saw Xian riding a small motorcycle out of the building. Jingtan led the way in the front, and Xian followed behind. The old tile-roofed housing area was not too far from the building of the Institute of Biological Sciences. Jingtan ran fast and chose a path that was easy for the motorcycle to take. At this time, there were not many people on the main road of the campus, not to mention the remote area near the old tile-roofed housing area. Therefore, Xian rode a little faster. He was also anxious. What if something happened to the 3 members of the Jiao family? But soon, Xian found that the cat was taking him to the old tile-roofed housing area, which he rarely came here. When Jingtan pushed the sheriff out of the door, Xian was embarrassed. The sheriff's pants were torn by the cat's claws, and he was absent from the important report hosted by the dean. In the end, it was all because of a cat from an unknown family. When they came out, Xian told the dean that there was an emergency. At that time, the meeting was about to start, so the dean did not ask much. However, after the meeting, the dean would definitely ask in detail. How could he make up a story? He definitely could not tell the truth. He would definitely be criticized. Alas. Anyway, since he was here, he had to save the cat in front of him. Unable to find anything for a while, Xian directly took off her coat. Anyway, the coat was not worth much, and it had not been washed for more than 10 days. She wrapped the sheriff up and put him in the trunk of the motorcycle. It was a little crowded, so she had to make do. Jingtan jumped on the motorcycle. This time, he just needed to follow them to the pet center. However, when Xian rode to the school gate, he suddenly found that he did not know which way to go to the pet center. He knew that the best pet hospital nearby was the Mingming Pet Center, but he had only heard of it and had never been there. Fortunately, there were more taxis coming and going at the school gate. After Xian parked the motorcycle, she held the cat in her arms and stopped a taxi that had just taken a passenger. She opened the door and got in. Jingtan also jumped on the car. "Hey, you cat, master, saving a cat's life is better than building a 7-floor pagoda." The driver was speechless. In the end, the driver's face twitched. He looked at the injured cat in Xian's arms, and then looked at Jingtan who was squatting on the seat. He warned Xian that if the cat pooped, peed, or vomited in the back seat, he would have to pay more. Then he started driving. The driver, who often went around this area, was very familiar with the Mingming Pet Center. In addition, the pet center was not too far away, so it didn't take long for them to arrive. The veterinarian who was checking the sheriff's injuries felt strange. Why were there so many scratched cats recently? After making sure that the sheriff's life was not in danger, Jingtan listened to the veterinarian's complaints and started to think. Besides the cat in the West Side compound and the sheriff, were there other cats that were attacked? The sheriff stayed at the pet center for treatment. At noon, Exin called Jiao Ma and briefly told her what had happened. Jiao Ma immediately rushed to the pet center. In order to thank Exin, Jiao Ma specifically called the dean of the Institute of Biological Sciences and said that she had something to do here. Exin came to help and was absent from the meeting. After Exin left, Jingtan did not have to worry about the rest of the situation. Jiao Ma notified the sheriff's owner and also called Jiao Wei, telling them not to ask Jingtan for lunch. The sheriff's injuries would be monitored in the pet center for another 2 days. After Jingtan was sent back to Tsinghua University by Jiao Ma, he came to the old tiled housing area again. Previously, he was in a hurry to find the sheriff and did not pay attention to other details. Now that he was not in a hurry, Jingtan decided to look for the sheriff carefully. Since the sheriff chose to hide here instead of running directly to the east side compound, the place where the fight happened must be closer to here. When the cat thief left that day, it met the sheriff and the cat in the west side compound. There were so many cats in the school, so it was definitely not just the sheriff and the cat in the west side compound that wandered outside last night. Why were they the only ones who were seriously injured? The most likely reason was that the cat thief wanted to avenge its paw. Unfortunately, Jingtan did not come out himself, so the sheriff and the cat in the west side compound had both bumped into the muzzle. The rain last night was too much of a coincidence. Perhaps the enemy had stopped chasing after the sheriff because of the rain. Otherwise, judging from the injuries on the sheriff's body, he wouldn't have let the sheriff go so easily. After all, compared to the cat in the West District, the sheriff's injuries were slightly lighter. Finally, Jingtan found some traces of a cat fight in a small forest at the edge of the old tile-roofed housing area. Not only that, when Jingtan came over, he saw the white body and black-tail cat named Longan sniffing around in the forest, as if it was trying to identify something. After seeing Jingtan, it quickly left. Walnut had said that Wu was warned not to appear in Tsinghua University, but his cat was not warned. This cat might have been sent by Wu, so it should not have participated in the incident last night. Regardless of whether Wu's cat would fight with the cat thief, Jingtan could not take this lying down. Although the Jiao Pa said that he should keep a low profile, it did not mean that he had to endure it all the time. It was his own territory, so he had to vent his anger personally. Since they did not manage to stop him last night, those cats would definitely come again. Since they were here, they could not leave. Jingtan stood up and sharpened his claws on the thick tree trunk, scratching off a few pieces of bark. Chapter 188. Jiao Ma hadn't been in a good mood for the past few days, but she didn't have to worry about her 2 children. They went to school from Monday to Friday and rested at home on weekends. At most, Jiao Yuan was a little naughty, but that was okay. What worried Jiao Ma the most was her cat. She couldn't even keep it locked up. Jiao Ma was on tenterhooks every night, afraid that her cat would be the 3rd cat to be seriously scratched and bitten. She couldn't even concentrate when she watched TV at night. After 9 o'clock, she would look at the wall clock in the living room every few minutes until Jingtan came back. Ever since the 2 cats in the 2 residential areas got into trouble, everyone took good care of their own cats. Some teachers even suggested to the school security office to clean up the stray cats in the school. When Xiao Gua heard about it, he also asked the people from the Green Wings Association to come over and take a few stray cats to the rescue station. After a series of things, the conclusion was that the school was quite normal. There was nothing unusual. The people from the association set up a few cat cages and caught cats. Except for the 2 stray cats that didn't seem to be a threat and were abandoned by the students, the rest of the cats were claimed by the people living nearby. After all, cats with cat tags were a minority in the school. There were also many people who felt that there was nothing to say about this. After all, it was just a matter of cats. There was no need to make it so complicated and go through so much trouble. As long as they took good care of their own cats, everything would be fine. So, in less than a week, the school was peaceful again. Sheriff was brought home after 2 days at the pet center. The day before yesterday, when Jingtan went for a walk in their building, he saw him lying on the balcony with an Elizabeth collar around his neck. It wasn't because he was castrated, but probably because he was afraid that he would lick the wounds on his body. Fortunately, Sheriff couldn't understand the complicated words people were saying. Otherwise, he would have been depressed. When the neighbors saw Sheriff like that, they asked his owner, your cat finally did it?" The Sheriff's owner only chuckled twice. In short, the news of Sheriff's castration had been spread by the aunties in the courtyard. However, the Sheriff seemed to be in good spirits. He could run and jump now, and his recovery ability was very strong. In about a week, he would be able to get rid of the collar. Recently, this guy was not used to wearing the collar and was rebelling at home. His owner was also very helpless. Huang was locked up at home, and even Depang was often watched by his grandmother. The only one in the courtyard who was out was Jingtan. Jingtan wasn't wandering around aimlessly. His intuition told him that the cats hadn't taught him a lesson yet. They hadn't achieved their goal, so they would definitely appear again. During this period of time, whether it was day or night, he had been wandering around conspicuously. Unfortunately, there weren't any results. It was probably because there were too many people watching the cats in the school over the past few days. Moreover, the cats must have been injured when they fought with the sheriff and the others. They were probably resting during this period of time. Wu's cat hadn't appeared on campus during this period of time. Walnut, on the other hand, had come once. He had been called over by Mao. Visiting Mao was secondary. The main thing was that after hearing from Mao about the two cats' injuries, Walnut had become suspicious. Jingtan had also stayed at Mao's place that day, listening to Walnut talk about some things related to the case. In the new photos, there was the yellow cat, which was the one that Jingtan had met when he was filming the advertisement outside. Unfortunately, there were so many cats in Chuhua City, and yellow cats were a common sight. There were several inside Chuhua University, and they all looked similar. Where could people start looking for them? Moreover, until now, they hadn't really taken any photos that were more special. The cat trainer was probably on guard. Therefore, after receiving a call from Mao, Walnut took the time to come over personally to understand the situation. Jingtan squatted next to them, listening to them discuss the case. According to what Walnut had learned from Wu, if a cat trainer really had a goal in mind, other than some regular training programs, he or she would need to be in close range to command the cat trainer at all times. Jingtan didn't know how to command specifically, but he could speculate that stealing purses was a regular training program. Therefore, when the cats were stealing purses, the cat trainer might not have been very close to them. However, when the sheriff and the cat in the West Side compound were being beaten, the cat trainer should have been watching from nearby. It wouldn't be too close, as cats would jump around when fighting, but it should be within 100 meters, right? If he really met the cat trainer, Jingtan decided to greet him. On this day, Jingtan swaggered to the school square. During the day, there were many students around the square. Next to the square, there was a cultural corridor. Students and some people who came out for a walk liked to sit there and rest or read books. What made Jingtan stop was a long-haired cat there. The cat was slightly bigger than an ordinary house cat. It was tabby-colored and looked like it had some forest cat lineage. However, this kind of cat wasn't very rare. In Xiaogua's store, there was a tabby-colored Norway forest cat. At first glance, it didn't look very different from this cat. At this moment, the cat was in the cultural corridor. Most students were very nice to the cats on campus. A student gave the cat bread in his hand to eat. However, the cat waited for the students to put down the bread, then stretched out its paw to stick it on. The cat bent its paw to pick up the bread and slowly took 2 bites. It was also indifferent to the people around it. It wasn't afraid, and it wasn't close. Maybe the students didn't feel it, so they stayed next to the cat and changed the way they fed it. They didn't know that the cat didn't care about their good intentions at all. When it was in a good mood, it ate the food in front of it, and when it was in a bad mood, it just left it there. Jingtan hadn't seen the cat in school before. It was already an adult cat. The people in the school usually raised cats when they were kittens. This cat was very likely to be an outsider. Maybe it noticed Jingtan's gaze. The cat, who was bending its paw to eat the bread, looked at Jingtan with cold eyes. After a few seconds, it lowered its head and continued to eat the bread nailed to its paw. However, Jing Tan knew that the cat must be wary of him. Just now, Jing Tan could feel the unfriendly message from the cat. If it hadn't been for that look, Jing Tan would have only been a little suspicious. However, after that look, Jing Tan was 80% sure that there was something wrong with the cat. That look didn't look like the look of a cat raised as a pet, but it didn't look like a stray or wild cat either. Although it stared at Jing Tan for a very short time, it made Jing Tan feel like he was being treated as prey. However, who was the real prey? It was still uncertain. Jing Tan looked over there for a while, then lifted his feet and left in another direction. When he turned the corner, Jing Tan suddenly turned his head and saw that the cat was staring at him. The indifferent look in its eyes was even more obvious than before. It was completely different from the one in Xiaoguo's shop. Jing Tan raised his chin provocatively in that direction, hooked his tail, and then walked away with his head held high and his chest out. Not long after Jing Tan left, the cat threw away the piece of ham that it had just nailed to its paw. It turned around and left, ignoring the fawning students. A boy was about to reach out and stop it, but the cat scratched him with its paw, leaving a long bloody mark on his hand. Blood immediately dripped down. Before the boy could angrily kick it, the cat ran away and disappeared from the sight of the students. Jiao family. During dinner, Jiaoma found that her cat ate a little too much. Was it tired from walking around and using up too much energy? Although Jiaoma often complained that her family spoiled the cat too much, she still did the same when it was her turn. After she gave Jing Tan some rice, she scooped 2 big pieces of meat from the soup bowl and put them in Jing Tan's bowl. It's good to eat more. When you're full, stay at home and sleep. You'll gain weight. Don't always run around outside. Jiaoma thought it was a good idea, but when she saw the news at night, Jing Tan opened the door and ran out again. Jiaoma was so angry that she almost threw the remote control in her hand. Coming out of the building, Jing Tan hid the necklace on Depang's balcony. Depang was lying on the door leading to the balcony. When it saw Jing Tan, it raised its head and moved its ears, but it didn't intend to get up. After Jing Tan left, it rested its chin on its paw and closed its eyes. Only its ears moved slightly, paying attention to the surroundings. Jing Tan ate so much at night because he wanted to fight at night. He had a feeling that the cat he saw in the school square today would definitely come to find him. He didn't know what would happen, so it was better to store as much energy as possible. Jing Tan walked along a small path in the area where the sheriff and the others were often active. There were fewer street lights here, and only sporadic light could be seen through the leaves. The moonlight was blocked by clouds, and the night breeze seemed to carry something different than usual. Jing Tan's nerves were a little tense. After 2 years of experience, Jing Tan's intuition had sharpened. Although he didn't really smell anything, he felt that he was being watched. He looked around, and all he could see were trees and bushes. Behind him was the narrow path, and there was no one. Some faint music coming from the square made it seem even quieter. Jing Tan slowed down his pace and perked up his ears to pay attention to the surroundings. Suddenly, a soft sound came from the bushes in front of him, followed by a few bird calls and the sound of flapping wings. It was similar to the situation when the cat traffickers came out of the cages. The tip of his tail moved, and Jing Tan looked in that direction for a while. He lifted his feet and walked in that direction. There was a trap there, but he couldn't lure those fellows out even if he didn't go. The sound of flapping wings was getting closer and closer, but Jing Tan stopped when he was about 10 meters away. He didn't continue forward. The flapping sound came from behind the bushes planted at the edge of the forest. Jing Tan turned a deaf ear to it, but he was alert to the movements around him. However, other than the sound of flapping wings, the forest was very quiet. If there was someone moving in the forest, it would definitely make a sound when it rubbed against the dense ryegrass. There was only the sound of leaves, but Jing Tan felt that he was being watched more and more. There was also a sense of danger. When the soft sound came from above, Jing Tan turned around and ran back. The cat was in the tree. Generally, when cats came down from a high tree, they would be a little timid. They wouldn't be as agile as when they climbed up, so Jingtan didn't think that the cat was likely to stay in the tree. However, this cat came down from the tree very quickly, almost in the blink of an eye. Although he didn't see the cat that jumped down from the tree, Jingtan was sure that it was the cat he saw in the square today. When Xiao Guo was filming an advertisement, he praised the Norwegian forest cat in the shop. He also said that this kind of cat was almost the only kind of cat that was fearless when it swooped down from the ground from a high place. Unfortunately, the cat in the shop was raised as a pet, so Jingtan didn't see how brave the cat was. Now, he deeply felt the sense of oppression brought by this kind of behavior. Regardless of whether other cats were like this or not, at least the one that Jingtan was facing now was fierce enough. Even if it was just a normal cat, not a special cat like the Monseigneur, Jingtan didn't dare to underestimate it. Jingtan ran fast and didn't get directly pounced on by the cat. The reason why he ran was to find a place where he felt safe. Who knew if there were other traps in the forest in front of him? Jingtan didn't want to be a fool and fall into it. He would only be at a disadvantage if he did. There was a forest not far from here, and Jingtan was very familiar with it. She had walked by it when she went back for dinner this afternoon. At that time, she did not feel any danger. Presumably, no one had set a trap there, so it was best to solve the problem in a place she was familiar with. It was safer than here. The right time, the right place, and the right people. The right place couldn't be ignored. The cat ran very fast, but Jingtan was faster. After running into the familiar forest, Jingtan directly climbed up the trees and shuttled between the trees. In terms of this skill, Jingtan was still very confident that he could beat the cat behind him. Moreover, only one had appeared. What about the others? The cat was probably a little tired from chasing Jingtan. It couldn't do anything to him. After it stopped, it opened its mouth and meowed a few times. This kind of cat's meowing was different from ordinary cats. Xiao Guo said that their meowing sounded like singing, but Jingtan didn't think it sounded like singing at all. Now, he didn't think it sounded like singing at all. It should be calling for its companions, right? Just right. If all of them appeared, he could solve it together. Just now, Jingtan noticed that there were other people around who were paying attention to this place. The cat trainer didn't appear. However, just as this cat stopped meowing, another cat meow came from another direction. The cat under the tree that was preparing to climb the tree paused. Jingtan looked at the cat and suddenly seemed to be on high alert. Speaking of which, the meow that came from the distance just now sounded familiar to Jingtan, but he couldn't figure it out at the moment. He didn't have much time to think about who it was. At this time, East Side Compound, first floor of Block B, Depang's house. The old lady was wearing reading glasses and reading a book about Kuan opera. Suddenly, she thought of something and shouted, "Depang, bring the slippers on the balcony in." The weather was getting hotter, and the winter slippers were no longer used. The old lady washed the slippers and put them outside to dry. Today, she forgot to put them away. Usually, the old lady often asked Depang to help bring things on the balcony. Depang could still understand a few words that he often heard. After waiting for a while and hearing no movement, the old lady looked up at the balcony. Depang? Chapter 189. Jingtan stayed in the tree. The cat below and the cat in the distance with a familiar voice were both calling out, as if they were calling for their companions. Jingtan wanted to howl, but he knew that if he howled loudly, the east side courtyard would probably make a scene, so he held it back. He didn't want to provoke the east side courtyard. There were a lot of people there who liked to stir up trouble. If they stirred up trouble, there would be no peace at night. There were soft whooshing sounds around. Jingtan looked around and saw that there were about 4 more cats. Looking at the way these 4 cats were running, they didn't seem to be injured. Maybe they weren't the same batch from a few days ago. The cat trainer he had never met might have had more than 2 or 3 cats. Although they weren't the same batch from last time, Jingtan was still holding a grudge against them. 1 against 5? No, Jingtan still chose to attack them one by one. These cats were all trained. If it were an adult, he would have been scratched a few times. They weren't the softened leopard cat. Cat claws didn't have eyes, and Jingtan didn't want to be scratched. The process wasn't important, as long as the result was the same. Jingtan chose the biggest cat as his first target, which was the one that had chased after him and roared. It gave Jingtan the feeling that it was the most dangerous. As for the other 4, he let them follow behind. After summoning its companion, the cat seemed to have become even more ferocious. It climbed up the tree and charged at Jingtan. It even bared its fangs at Jingtan and growled threateningly. In this originally quiet forest, it seemed to have a strong psychological and imposing pressure. However, Jingtan wasn't a real cat, and cats weren't monkeys. Fighting in trees was still very limited. Relatively speaking, Jingtan had a lot more advantages than it. Obviously, this cat wasn't used to Jingtan's running style of jumping between trees. Although it didn't hesitate as long as the other cats, it didn't have much experience and didn't land accurately. Jingtan took advantage of this and found an opportunity to kick it. As expected, the cat was kicked down. There were more branches below. The cat hooked onto a branch as a cushion before landing in the grass on the ground. After being kicked by Jingtan, it was not bad to have such a reaction. Before it could even stand firm on the ground, Jingtan had already jumped down from the tree and swiped at it with his claws. Then, it scratched off a claw. Therefore, a creature with thick and long hair like this was like wearing soft armor. It could always reduce the opponent's attack power by a lot. Because of this, Jingtan couldn't scratch this cat like he did to the leopard cat. Since claws couldn't solve the problem well, he would just use his fists. Although he didn't use his full strength, Jingtan still held back a little in order to prevent his secrets from being exposed. Even so, 2 slaps and 1 kick were quite a blow to the cat that had just fallen from the tree. Jingtan saw that the cat's leg seemed to be injured. It was either sprained or fractured. Generally, when one suffered such injuries, one shouldn't move at will, especially when it was fractured. However, this guy still looked so fierce. It opened its mouth and growled, its ears pressed back, and its body expanded when its fur stood up. It seemed more intimidating. Unfortunately, it was useless against Jingtan, but it couldn't be underestimated. When Jingtan went up to beat it, if he didn't dodge quickly, he would have been scratched by this guy. A piece of bark on the trunk of the tree next to him was hooked off. Jingtan was about to continue to slap the long-haired cat in front of him to shut it up when suddenly his ears moved. He retreated to the side of a thick tree. If the situation wasn't right, he would jump up the tree first. When Jingtan saw the 3 figures that jumped out, he was relieved. It was Awu's 3 cats. Jingtan also remembered that the roar in the distance just now was more like the cry of the white-body black-tail cat called Longan. A cat jumped down from a tree behind Jingtan and pounced at her. Just as Jingtan was about to turn around and slap it, a figure jumped out from the bushes. With an agility that did not match its size, it jumped up and pinned the cat behind Jingtan to the ground. The cat screamed, "Aw," under the weight. Depang, this guy, usually looked lazy and kind, but when he was fierce, he was definitely stronger than the sheriff. Jingtan always knew this. But he didn't expect Depang to come here at this time. The old lady must have told him not to run around. If the old lady found out that this fatty ran out, he didn't know how anxious she would be. After this incident, Depang would probably be punished to squat on instant noodles when he went back. Depang ran here probably because he heard Longan's roar, but Jingtan was still very touched that he could come over. It could be seen that Depang wasn't in the camp of Longan and the other 2 cats. The cooperation between the 3 cats was too good. Depang didn't have the intention to join them. The reason he came over was most likely to help Jingtan. As expected of the cat brothers. How loyal. Although Awu wasn't nearby, looking at the cooperation between Longan and the other 2 cats, it was obvious that this wasn't the first time they encountered this kind of thing. Just like the basic skills of the cat thieves to steal their own wallets, Longan and the other 2 cats were also very skilled in fighting together. Longan was calm and could always choose the best time. Lotus Seed's attack power wasn't high, but it was agile. And the long-haired cat Babeo was resistant to scratches. This guy's temperament was a bit like the sheriff's. It belonged to the type that became fiercer the more it fought. With the other two beside it, it wouldn't be too arbitrary. Seeing this scene, Jingtan could only say that this was indeed trained by Ah Wu. It wasn't as lazy as the sheriff and the other cats when they usually fought. When cats PK with cats, not only would they run around, but they would also make low growls or other sounds. Jingtan didn't use this method, so it was still considered quiet earlier. But when there were more cats, the quiet little forest became lively. This place wasn't too far from the eastern courtyard. If it was during the day, the people in the eastern courtyard might not have noticed the movements in the forest. But now it was night time, and this area was very quiet at night. When the cats on both sides fought, they made different sounds. In addition, Babeo was probably too excited to fight just now, so it roared loudly, causing the other cats to roar as well. There was also the cat that was beaten down by Jingtan and couldn't get up to walk. Although it didn't continue to roar like this, the cats in the courtyard heard it. In the eastern courtyard, Mao was taking a bath when it suddenly heard Black Rice's loud roar. It didn't even wipe off the water on its body and directly came out naked. It was the only one at home anyway, so it wasn't afraid of being seen. When Mao came out, it saw Black Rice standing on the balcony railing and shouting in a direction. It was so scared that it quickly ran to the balcony and carried Black Rice indoors. Luckily, it was late at night, so no one was paying attention. Otherwise, they would definitely notice that there was a naked man here. When Black Rice was screaming, the sheriff and Huang were both at home, yelling and scratching at the door. Unfortunately, they were watched tightly and couldn't go out. Suddenly, the eastern courtyard was noisy again. The cats were meowing, and the dogs were barking at the top of their lungs. Every time this happened in the courtyard, it was either a thief or a cat trafficker. So when the security uncle heard the commotion this time, he notified the school security office. The most anxious ones were Jiao Ma and Depang's old lady. The neighbors couldn't persuade them to stop. Before the security office people came, they went out with flashlights to look for the cats. Mao put Black Rice in the pet bag, carried the bag, and went out with Jiao Ma and the others. Chu Xiangyang, who lived next door to the Jiao family, helped to look after the children again. Other than that, the fourth floor of Block B was also noisy. "Let me out. Let me out," Jiang Jun's toes clanged on the iron fence. "You're blind when you go out at night." Professor Tan, who had just been woken up, said angrily. Generally speaking, most birds had poor eyesight at night and didn't make much noise, so it was easy to get lost outside. Parrots were the same. At night, they would quietly hide. Because of this, many parrots liked to crawl under people's blankets. Jiang Jun used to crawl under people's blankets, but ever since he pooped in his blankets, Professor Tan threw him out to sleep in a cage. Jiang Jun was a special case among parrots. Sometimes, when he was in a good mood, he didn't sleep at night. Although he didn't make loud noises, he would still sing a little to entertain himself. Because he didn't disturb people, his owner, Professor Tan, let him be. Hearing Professor Tan's scolding, Jiang Jun paused for a moment, then continued to step on the iron fence. He stomped even louder, and shouted like he was singing, "Let me out, go to sleep." At the same time, Jingtan's situation was very good. Although Jingtan could deal with these cats by himself, since he had a helper, Jingtan could spare some time to find the cat trainer earlier. Another reason why Jingtan chose this small forest was that the terrain and the layout of the forest made it convenient for him to find the cat trainer behind the scenes. At this time, the cat trainer was hiding behind a statue and observing with night vision goggles. He wasn't having a good time recently. The police were watching him closely, and there was another cat trainer, Wu, waiting behind him. It wasn't easy to hear that Wu wasn't allowed to get close to Tsinghua University, so he chose to attack Tsinghua University. He didn't expect to fail here. Last time, he didn't send out Boss and was seriously injured. This time, he decided to take revenge and replaced a group of healthy cats with Boss leading the team. But he didn't expect that in a university, there were so many cats that were good at fighting. Shouldn't the cats in this kind of campus be more docile? But the fact was, last time, the 4 cats that he had trained could only be said to have won a Pyrrhic victory against the 2 cats. This time, the boss was defeated at the beginning, and the cats that came later weren't gentle characters. Plus, Wu's 3 cats were here. The cat trainer's mind was full of twists and turns, but before he could figure out the reason, he realized that the cat that had easily beaten the boss he had trained with great difficulty was actually running straight towards him. What the F***ck? The cat trainer didn't care about the cats in the forest anymore. He turned around and ran. His own cat in the forest was being beaten up, so it couldn't spare time to help him. Plus, he had trained cats for many years, so of course, he could tell which cats were easy to mess with and which weren't. Against this cat, it was better to run first. While Jingtan was chasing the cat trainer, Mao took the old lady and Zhao Ma to the small forest according to Black Rice's reaction. Depang heard the old lady call his name, and bit the cat that was being pressed down by him again. Then, it ran out of the forest and jumped into the old lady's arms. The old lady's hands trembled as she asked Mao to use the flashlight to check on her cat's condition. Depang's mouth was still stuck with cat fur from an unknown cat. Anyway, judging from the color, it didn't belong to Depang. The light wasn't good, so the small injuries weren't easy to see, but she didn't see any major injuries. The old lady was relieved. Chapter 190. Zheng Tan actually heard the shouts of the Jiao Ma and the others, but he didn't stop. It wasn't easy to catch this cat trainer, and he couldn't let all his efforts go to waste. Although the cat trainer looked a little embarrassed and was surprised by Zheng Tan's sudden pursuit, Zheng Tan could tell from the cat trainer's escape route that this guy was fully prepared and had a good understanding of the layout of the surrounding area. He wasn't just running around with his head in a mess. This guy ran very fast and didn't look very strong. Zheng Tan didn't expect him to run so fast and react so quickly. Almost as soon as Zheng Tan rushed over, the guy turned around and slipped away, jumping over railings and some obstacles with ease. Zheng Tan chased after him, but he didn't let down his guard. The guy's running route wasn't the main road of the campus, and there were no cameras installed in these places. No wonder the people in the school security office didn't find any clues from the surveillance cameras. The cat trainer glanced back when he jumped over a fence. With the help of a nearby street lamp, he saw the black shadow that was chasing after him. He cursed in his heart. Although he wasn't caught, the cat kept chasing after him. In all his years of cat training, he had never seen a cat with such strong endurance. F***ck. Fortunately, he was prepared. The cat trainer looked at a small forest in front of him and made a few strange sounds from his mouth. The sounds weren't loud and sounded like some kind of insect chirping. Zheng Tan could hear it clearly, and he had heard this sound in the forest before. It was just that at that time, the sounds of the cats were mixed together and Zheng Tan didn't pay special attention to it. Whoosh! 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 4 figures rushed out of the forest. This was the cat trainer's backup plan. To be on the safe side, in addition to the few cats that were fighting in the forest, he had brought 2 healthy cats and 2 cats that weren't seriously injured last time. They had stayed here to ambush, and now they had become the cat trainer's helpers for his escape. Zheng Tan wasn't afraid of the uninjured boss, let alone these cats. But now, Zheng Tan's main target was the cat trainer, so he didn't care about these cats for the time being. When the 4 figures rushed over from the front, Zheng Tan jumped over the cat in front and knocked away the second one that was blocking the way. As for the 2 behind, Zheng Tan had already left them behind. When the cat trainer looked behind him to see how the interception was going, he happened to see Zheng Tan forcefully knocking away the cat that was blocking the way. He almost spat out blood. Was this really a F***king cat and not a combat dog? Which cat would use such a violent method in such a situation? Originally, the cat trainer just hoped that his cat could delay Zheng Tan for a while so that he had a chance to get rid of the chase, but he didn't expect that it didn't have any effect at all. At the thought of this fierce cat, the cat trainer endured the discomfort and continued to run. However, this cat trainer wasn't familiar with the surroundings, and he didn't have the good night vision of a cat. When he was crossing a lawn, he tripped over a raised area. He didn't sprain his ankle, but after a few seconds, when he was ready to speed up again, a strong force suddenly hit him from behind. He fell directly to the ground, his chin hitting the ground. Although it was grass, it wasn't a good feeling, and his head was a little dizzy. The cat trainer shook his head, got up, and reached into his pants to take out the stun baton. Before he could find the target, he was kicked in the back and fell forward again. However, because he had changed direction when he got up to find the target, this time he fell and hit the landscape stone next to him. Hitting a stone wasn't like hitting the grass, not to mention hitting the landscape stone. His head, which was already a little dizzy, suddenly became more dizzy. Blood flowed from his forehead and nose, and the stun baton fell to the ground. Although his head was dizzy and his thoughts weren't very clear, with the instinct of a cat trainer, he still made some urgent insect-like sounds, calling his cat to come over and help. Jingtan kicked the stun baton that fell on the grass into the artificial lake not far away. He went up and clawed at the cat trainer, leaving a claw mark on his face. The cat trainer screamed and staggered to stand up. His head was dizzy, and he couldn't run as nimbly as before. He didn't even have time to think about why he was kicked down. It was only a cat chasing him. Did a cat have this kind of strength? This question would only be asked when his head was clear. Jingtan watched him stand up, jump up, and kick him again. He watched the man fall to the ground for the third time. Probably because he was tired and dizzy, the man didn't intend to stand up again. He pulled up the hood of his clothes to cover his head and curled up with his face facing the ground to prevent Jingtan from scratching his face. Jingtan looked at the guy in front of him who was pretending to be a turtle. He didn't immediately rush up. After seeing the stun baton, he suspected that this guy still had some equipment hidden on his body. To be safe, Jingtan didn't intend to fight in close combat. But if this guy thought that he couldn't do anything to him if he didn't get close, then he was very wrong. Jingtan looked around. Some time ago, the lawn areas in the school were paved with bricks. The roads in the lawn that the students walked on were all paved with square lawn bricks, and there were some broken and abandoned lawn bricks in the bushes next to them that hadn't been cleaned up. Jingtan walked over, picked up a piece, and threw it at the person who was pretending to be a turtle. There were no other people around, no cameras, and no one saw at night. Jingtan stood upright on his two hind legs, and then used his two front paws to hold the lawn bricks and throw them at the person. A cat came over and attacked Jingtan, but Jingtan whipped it to the side. Then Jingtan continued to hold the brick and throw it at the person. At first, the person was screaming in pain, but later, he stopped screaming. He probably couldn't take it anymore. When he got up, he waved his hand, and a thin whip was swung around in a circle. Zhang Zian didn't know if this whip was used to train cats. The strength of the whip was good, and his movements looked very experienced. Unfortunately, Jingtan was outside the whip's attack range. Jingtan was now very glad that he didn't attack at close range. Otherwise, he would have most likely been hit by the whip. After the person swung the whip around a few times, he found that he didn't hit the target. Instead, he was a little unsteady. He planned to walk to the side of a tree to lean on, but suddenly, he felt a pain on his face. He had just woken up a little, but now he felt confused again. After throwing the brick, Jingtan saw that the person fell to the ground again. He wondered if he should go over and take a look, and then scratch a few times to help the sheriff and the others take revenge. Then, he heard the sound of someone running over. It was Mao. There weren't many street lights here, and only a vague shadow could be seen. Mao turned on the flashlight and looked over. He saw a half-dead person on the ground, and the black cat that Jiao Ma was anxiously looking for was squatting on a landscape stone. It looked very calm. Black Coal, hurry up and go back. Your cat mom is anxiously looking for you. Leave this to me, Mao said to Jingtan. Seeing Mao, Jingtan didn't want to continue arguing with this cat trainer. Before he left, he had stepped on the cat trainer's body. Jiao Ma, who had finally seen her cat, was finally relieved. But after the worry, she was angry. Jiao Ma was very angry, and the consequences were very serious. She asked Jing Tan to take out the house key. Jing Tan pretended not to know. After all, he had hidden the key well. As long as Depang didn't betray him, Jiao Ma wouldn't be able to find it. The noisy East Side compound returned to peace soon after the arrival of the police. Jing Tan didn't know what happened to Ah Wu and his 3 cats, but from the news he heard from Mao the next day, Jing Tan learned that the cat trainer had been personally taken away by Walnut. He had also taken away a few cats, including the boss that had been beaten up by Jing Tan. Ah Wu's cat had been taken away by himself. Walnut and Mao didn't plan to publicize the fact that they were cat trainers. Otherwise, not only the cats in the school, but also all the cats in Chuhua City would be hated by people, especially those who had their wallets stolen. It didn't matter if they had been stolen by a cat or not, they would all vent their anger on the cat. There would also be people who were hostile to cats who would pour all kinds of dirty water on the cat. Walnut and Mao didn't want people to think of a thief when they first saw a cat. Also, the cat-friendly event hadn't been held for long. Now that it was exposed, it would be a slap in the face. It was better to keep it a secret. They had also discussed with the school's higher-ups. They wouldn't make the incident public. They would just say that they had caught a thief in the middle of the night. It was true that they had caught a thief, so it wasn't considered hiding the truth. They didn't go against their conscience. Jing Tan stayed at home. He didn't go out that day, and he wouldn't go out for the next few days. At most, he would wander around the building, at least for the time being. Jing Tan didn't hand over the door key, so he consciously stayed at home to reflect on his mistakes. When Jiao Ma calmed down one day, Jing Tan would go out for a walk. When he was sunbathing on the balcony, Jing Tan saw a familiar car parked in the compound. It belonged to Depang's cat father. It seemed that Depang should be at home eating instant noodles. The old lady couldn't bear it, so only the cat father came to supervise. Jing Tan thought about it. What would happen if Jiao Pa was at home? In the end, he couldn't think of the most likely scenario. Jiao Pa was too unpredictable. He couldn't be compared to ordinary people. What angered Jing Tan the most was that little Pomelo wouldn't let him sleep on the bed. For the past 2 days, Jing Tan had been sleeping on the cat tree. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. Jing Tan fished out a small piece of soil from the flower pot next to him and threw it towards the 4th floor. It hit the iron net. General, who was listless and thinking about something, heard the noise. It immediately flapped its wings and ran over, looking left and right. Jing Tan wasn't in the mood to pay attention to the bird. After rolling around on the balcony, he decided to go online and read some gossip. This time, Jing Tan didn't go to the pet forum. Instead, he went to Chuhua University's forum. The most popular posts were all about the incident. The cat was gone, and so was the cat trainer, but people's discussion didn't stop. In fact, it was getting weirder and weirder. The aunties in the East Courtyard had exaggerated the story and spread it out, saying that the cats and dogs in the courtyard had helped to catch the thief this time. With the previous experience, this time the story was even more exaggerated. However, most people outside the courtyard only took it as a joke and did not take it seriously. In contrast, the students' discussion this time was unusually popular. That night, the cats in the forest fought and ran in a wider area. When they got close to the student dormitory in a certain district, some students who didn't sleep at night heard the scary cat calls. These calls lasted for a long time, and it sounded like the temperature had dropped a few degrees. The next day, they heard the news that the school caught a thief, so they started to talk about it. Jing Tan couldn't help but complain. These students thought too much. They even came up with demons and ghosts. Chapter 191. For Jing Tan, the days of facing the wall at home could be summed up in one word: boring. 2 days ago, he could go online to pass the time and watch the commercials he had filmed. Other than that, he could only sleep at home. Celestine came once, but in order to avoid being scolded by Jiao Ma, Celestine only went to Mao's place on the 3rd floor. Jing Tan went to listen to them talk about the follow-up of the incident. The cat trainer was sentenced. Celestine didn't say the details, but Jingtan learned that the cat that had been beaten up by him was taken away by Ah Wu. It was said that the cat was very fierce and aggressive. Especially after it was beaten up by Jingtan, its temper became worse. Some people even suggested to Walnut that it should be euthanized directly, as it was too dangerous to let such a cat out. Later, Wu said that as a reward for this incident, and also to solve the problem of boss, Walnut was happy to give the cat to Ah Wu. When the news that Ah Wu was not allowed to get close to Chu Hua University was released by Walnut himself, in order to lure the snake out of its hole. Obviously, his goal was achieved. No wonder Jingtan could see Gue Yuan at school during that time. After the incident subsided, no one knew where the person and the cat went. In general, Jingtan spent most of his time at home. For Jingtan, who liked to walk outside, it was very uncomfortable to hold it in. Every day, he lay on the balcony and looked outside sadly. Finally, one day a week later, after breakfast, when Jiao Ma took Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo out, Jingtan tried to follow behind them. As he walked, he looked at Jiao Ma's face. Little Pomelo glanced at Jingtan, pursed her lips and didn't say anything. Jiao Yuan grinned and snickered. Jingtan followed them all the way to the door on the first floor. When the three of them went out, Jiao Ma didn't say anything, so he shamelessly rushed out before the door closed. He then looked at Jiao Ma's expression. She did not look happy, but more than that, she looked helpless. Don't cause trouble and don't meddle in other people's business. If you encounter a thief in the future, don't rush up on your own. Catching thieves is the job of the police and dogs. Why would a cat like you rush up on your own? Jiao Ma was indeed frightened that night. Otherwise, she would not have been angry for so long. Although this was a reprimand, at the same time, it also meant that Jiao Ma had temporarily acquiesced to Jingtan going out. If it weren't for Jiao Ma watching, Jingtan would have jumped up and done a few somersaults in excitement. Somersaults were not difficult for cats. After sending little Pomelo to the affiliated primary school, Jingtan watched Mama Jiao and Jiao Yuan leave until they were out of sight. Then, he ran to the lawn at the side, jumping up and down. For the past week, he felt like his whole body was going to rust. He had been holding it in for so long, but now that he was running, he felt much better. After flirting with a few gray magpies, Jingtan walked along the flower bed. When he arrived at the teacher activity center, he heard a familiar voice. Jingtan jumped onto a windowsill and looked inside. He saw the B*TCH bird standing on a towel rack, swaying its head and singing kunku opera with the retired teachers. No wonder this bird's accent was weird and it always sang opera. It was learning from these old men and women. Depang's grandmother was also inside. Depang was squatting next to her. General would occasionally run up to her and flirt with her, but he would be slapped away. Jingtan did not understand the opera and was not interested in it. He didn't go too far in the morning. He walked around the school and decided to go outside in the afternoon. Some people wanted to go further after being locked up for a long time. Jingtan belonged to this category. He chose the old street where Jiao Yuan's school was located. The furthest he walked along this road was around Uncle Lame's house. Today, Jingtan decided to go further. The pace of the city's construction was speeding up. After not seeing it for a while, Jingtan felt that there were some changes. When he arrived at Uncle Lame's old neighborhood, Jingtan thought for a moment. He jumped over the wall and came to the front of the building. Swish, at the familiar window, the window was pulled open. An unfamiliar face appeared and there was some conversation. There were also some potted plants on the balcony, not the cardboard boxes from before. This place must have been sold to someone else. Since he didn't know anyone, Jingtan didn't stay any longer. He walked out of the neighborhood and walked forward according to his plan. The further he walked, the more obvious the difference between the old street and the old street. Whether it was the shops or the wall, there was a vitality of the new era. When there was no wall, Jingtan walked along the side. Occasionally, people would look at him, but most people were in a hurry and didn't bother to pay attention to a cat that didn't look special. After walking for a while, Jingtan saw a bridge in front of him. There were a lot of pedestrians on both sides of the street. There was no path that satisfied Jingtan, so Jingtan didn't want to go any further. However, he didn't want to turn around and go back immediately, so he decided to walk on the bridge. Ignoring the sounds of cats around him, Jingtan walked up the stairs by himself. There were fruit sellers at the corner of the stairs. Some people were bargaining. When he came to the bridge, Jingtan looked around. It was quite rich. Other than a few fruit sellers, there were also people selling cakes and small toys. Were there no law enforcement officers here? Standing on the bridge, there was an endless stream of traffic below him. On one side of the bridge, there was a street full of old buildings. Many of the buildings would be marked with the word demolished. On the other side, there was a more colorful and prosperous world. The tall modern buildings showed the atmosphere of a metropolis. Looking away, Jingtan looked around the bridge. Finally, his eyes fell on the middle of the bridge. There was an old man with white hair, wearing old grayish-blue clothes, sitting on a simple folding stool. His back was leaning against the railing. Next to him was a cane for the blind. Above his head was a large black umbrella. The handle of the umbrella was open to block the sun. The handle of the umbrella was tied to the railing. The old man was holding an arrow in his arms. Next to his feet was a small wooden box. Inside the box were some coins and small bills. A performer? And a blind one? While Jingtan was looking around, the people around him were also looking at the black cat curiously. They had been selling things on the bridge for some time. This was the first time they saw a cat walking up alone. It didn't seem to be afraid of people at all. It was very calm and didn't pay attention to the teasing of passersby. Originally, some people were just looking at the black cat curiously. Then they started to call out to the passersby who wanted to buy things. However, when they saw the black cat walking towards the blind old man in the middle, some people couldn't help but stop shouting and pay attention to the old man. Jingtan was purely curious. He had heard some things from Mao and the others. For example, there were some popular scammers. Many people pretended to be blind and pitiful to gain sympathy from people. The money they earned in a day was not necessarily less than some office workers. However, this old man didn't beg for money from passersby. Second, he didn't write on the ground or write on the cushion to make people sympathize with him. Third, Jingtan felt that this person was a bit strange, but he couldn't tell what was strange. Was this person really blind? Jingtan walked closer and stopped half a meter away from the old man. He squatted and tilted his head to look at the man who was sitting there with his eyes closed as if he had fallen asleep. After waiting for 2 minutes, he found that the old man had no intention of opening his eyes. His eyes fell on the open wooden box at the old man's feet. Jingtan got up and walked over. He looked at the coins in the wooden box, then looked at the old man who was leaning against the railing with his eyes closed. Then he looked at the box again. Then he raised his paw and fished around. He bent his paw and hooked a coin up and put it down again. The coin fell and made a ding sound when it touched other coins. When Jingtan put the coin in the box, he paid attention to the old man. When the coin made a ding sound, he noticed that the old man's ears moved. Among the people that Jingtan had met, there weren't many who could move their ears. It was rare to see someone who could move their ears. Jingtan's bad taste after a week of holding back at home came back again. Anyway, as long as he didn't go too far, the people around him would only think that a cat was curious about the coins in the box but couldn't fish them out. They wouldn't think too much about it. He fished up another coin. Just as he was about to fish it out of the wooden box, he loosened his paw and made another ding sound. The old man's ears moved again. He fished it up again and loosened his paw. Ding! The old man's ears moved again. After repeating it a few times, Jingtan became impatient. Why didn't this old man open his eyes? Even if there was something wrong with his eyes and he couldn't open them, could he not speak? Or could it be that this old man couldn't see or speak? Even if he couldn't see or speak, at least he still had his hearing. Looking at the situation just now, this old man's hearing shouldn't be too bad. He didn't react at all when he heard that his money box was being moved. There wasn't even any change in his expression. He was way too calm. Thinking back to when he was performing outside with Third Master Fong, although it was embarrassing, Jingtan would definitely beat up anyone who touched the money box. But this old man? He squatted down and thought for a while, the tip of his tail wagging rhythmically. Then, Jingtan set his gaze on the half bottle of mineral water next to the folding stool. He walked over, raised his paw, and pushed. This was a bad habit that Jingtan had picked up after staying with the sheriff and Huang for a long time. After the half bottle of mineral water fell, it rolled away in the direction away from the old man. The old man could touch the bottle with his hand down, but now it was difficult for him to touch it. After all, he was blind. The people around who saw this scene all had the same thought in their hearts: this cat's character is really King bad. Jingtan didn't care about what others thought. Looking at the person who was still sitting there, he cursed in his heart, this person is just a block of wood, right? Other than moving his ears, what else can he do? Boring. After harassing for a long time, there was no response. Jingtan rolled back the half bottle of mineral water that had rolled away. Although he didn't make the bottle stand up, he still pushed it in the same place, where the old man could touch it with his hand down. Just as he was about to leave, Jingtan noticed that the beard on the old man's chin was quite long. When the wind blew, it swayed on both sides. Thinking that the old man didn't respond for a long time, Jingtan's bad taste rose again. He jumped up and stretched out his paw to touch the old man's long beard. Then, there was still no response. Jingtan felt that if those naughty kids were to grab his beard, he would definitely be angry and flip out. He really didn't know how the old man could tolerate it. If the old man could give some other reaction other than moving his ears, Jingtan wouldn't be interested in teasing him. But the old man just couldn't sit still, which made Jingtan stubborn, persevering to grab his beard again and again. Not far away, the dark-skinned uncle who was buying mangoes saw this situation and opened his mouth wide, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. He even forgot to reply to the passerby who asked for the price. He sighed in his heart, this cat must be looking for trouble. Jingtan was busy making the old man angry, so he didn't notice the change in the faces of the stall owners around him. Chapter 192. Recently, Jin had reached a bottleneck in his creation and was in a very bad state. His teammates suggested that he go out for a walk. Maybe he would get some inspiration, but he should not be impatient and should not be too burdened. He should maintain his passion for music. Therefore, when he was not performing, Jin would walk around Chu Hua with his guitar on his back. During this time, Jin played in the underground passages and some squares. He also slept in the park at night. It was as if he had returned to the time when he was a vagabond singer. His impatient mood gradually calmed down. Today, Jin had originally planned to sing in the central square. In fact, there were some talented young people performing in many large squares in Chu Hua at night. In the past 2 days, Jin had met many of them in the other 2 places, and he had gained a lot during the exchange. However, Jin did not expect to meet Jingtan here. Jin was grateful to Jingtan, and he also had some awe that he could not explain. Sometimes, Jin felt that it was incredible that a cat could have such a great impact on him and the band. If there was no black cat, where would he and his teammates go? He did not dare to imagine that he had almost given up at that time. Therefore, Jin and his teammates had always been grateful to this cat, which could be seen from their black cat team badges. Speaking of awe, perhaps this was the only famous cat that Jin had ever met. After all, this was a cat that even Yi Hao, the big boss of the night building, dared to show displeasure to him. Jin did not know where Jingtan lived. In fact, he did not even know Jingtan's background. He only knew that this cat was very familiar with several big shots, and that every time he went to the night building, he would go with several big shots. Therefore, when he first saw Jingtan, Jin was not sure. However, after looking at him for a while, he matched the famous cat with the black cat in front of him. Perhaps, there was no other cat that dared to bully a blind old man in such a place in such an atmosphere. Black charcoal. Ah, Jean shouted. He was very happy to see Jing Tan. This was their band's lucky star. Jing Tan had just plucked a strand of the old man's beard when he saw the old man's face twitch. There was no other reaction. Jing Tan was about to pluck 2 more strands to see how long the old man could endure when he suddenly heard someone calling his name. Idiot! Why did he call her by her name? Jing Tan cursed in his heart. When doing bad things, the biggest taboo was to expose one's true identity. Originally, this was Jing Tan's first time here, and no one knew who Jing Tan was. Who would be able to find him if he took a stroll and left with his tail wagging? But now, Ah Jean directly called out his name. Jing Tan hesitated. Should he pretend that he had been mistaken for someone else? As he was thinking, Jing Tan looked up at the old man sitting there and found that the old man had opened his eyes. His eyeballs were turbid gray and white, and he was looking at where Jing Tan was. Jing Tan was so scared that he jumped back reflexively. It was not that Jing Tan was timid, but it was too sudden. The old man had not opened his eyes for so long, but now he suddenly opened them. However, he was really blind. Not only did the old man open his eyes, but he also moved. As soon as the old man moved, Ah Jean hurried over, afraid that the old man would hit Jing Tan with his cane. The other people who had set up stalls around were also thinking about how the old man would deal with the cat. Although the old man usually did not talk much, did not communicate with others, and did not argue with anyone, that was because no one provoked him. The current situation was that the cat was courting death. Even Jing Tan thought that the old man would teach him a lesson. The cat still had a strand of beard in its claws. So he was ready to slip away. Unexpectedly, the old man moved, adjusted his sitting position, and began to play the arrow. Jing Tan had seen the old woman in Jiao Pa's hometown play the arrow. Now that he heard the old man play it, he felt that he should not be inferior to the old woman. Moreover, the old man was blind. It was too rare. At the same time, Jing Tan had to admit that the old man had a good temper. He was still in the mood to play the arrow even though he was pulling his beard. Although Ah Jean did not know much about the arrow, he was very sensitive to music. Ah Jean felt that the old man did not seem to be angry. Instead, he sounded like he was in a good mood. There were many people who played the arrow, and most of them had a sad and cold feeling. But now, the arrow tune played by the old man made people feel like they were on a sunset dam. Unknowingly, the tension just now had relaxed a lot. Ah Jean judged the old man's mood by the arrow tune, while Jing Tan felt whether the old man had any malicious intentions through his intuition. Since the old man was not going to pursue the matter, Jing Tan could not continue to bully the blind man. Moreover, Ah Jean was here. If he continued to cause trouble, more information would be inadvertently revealed by the idiot Ah Jean. Since he did not intend to continue to bully the old man, Jing Tan simply squatted beside him and listened to the old man play the arrow. Ah Jean was not going to leave immediately. He stood beside Jing Tan and leaned against the railing, listening to the old man play the arrow. Ah Jean could see that the old man was an expert in playing the arrow. He was no worse than the teachers in the music academy. Listening to him for a while could also be good for his own composition. Another point was that Ah Jean had heard a lot of arrow music, but he had never heard the song played by the old man. However, he was too embarrassed to interrupt and ask, so he stood quietly by the side and enjoyed it. The people who set up stalls around had long been used to the old man playing the arrow. Seeing that there was no fun to watch, they began to busy themselves with their own stalls. For them, a cat was not as attractive as money. Speaking of money, Jing Tan now understood why the old man had so much money in his wooden box. If one played the arrow well, passers-by would be willing to listen to it and like it. In addition, they sympathized with the old man, so they would give some money. Although most of the money was small change, it was enough to earn a lot in a day. For an old man, it was more than enough for his living expenses, and there was still money left to enjoy other things. In fact, there were more people giving money today than usual, and part of it was because of Jing Tan's cat. This was also the reason why some performers liked to take children or animals with them. When it was almost dark, Jing Tan got up and was ready to go back to pick up little Pomelo. Black charcoal, are you ready to go? Jean was immersed in the tune of the arrow. When the sound of the arrow stopped, he realized that the black cat, who had been squatting next to him, had walked to the side and was ready to go down the overpass. Carrying the guitar on his back, Jean was ready to follow Jingtan all the way. Anyway, he did not have an absolute destination now. Moreover, he was very curious about Jingtan's address. Where did this cat live? What kind of place did it live in? Why did it come here alone? Jingtan knew that Jean was following him, but he did not pay attention to him. When passing by a stall selling food, Jean stopped Jingtan. Black charcoal, I'll treat you to chicken fillet. Jean remembered that this cat seemed to have a wide range of food. This was also a way to express his gratitude. It was rare to see Jingtan alone. In the past, when Jean saw Jingtan was with Celestine and Yihao, so Jean did not dare to interrupt. Speaking of meat, Jingtan was indeed a little hungry now. Anyway, he was not in a hurry. There was still half an hour before little Pomelo's school ended, so it was not too late to go back after eating. Seeing that Jingtan had stopped, Jean knew that this cat should have agreed, so he happily walked to the stall. 2 servings. Before he finished speaking, Jean froze. He dug in his pockets and patted his trouser pockets. After searching for a long time, he looked at Jingtan with a depressed face. Black charcoal, have you seen my wallet and phone? Jingtan. Idiot. You don't even know that your phone and wallet have been stolen. On the other side, on the overpass, after Jingtan and Jean left, the old man did not play the arrow anymore. He just sat there quietly with his eyes closed, returning to his previous state. It was not until the sun set that the old man folded the low stool and put it in the wooden box with money. The wooden box was not big, but it was just enough to accommodate the folded low stool. The old man untied the big black umbrella tied to the railing and tidied up everything unhurriedly. Every movement was not fast, but very smooth. The people around were not surprised. If someone repeated the same thing every day, day after day, he could also do this. For a blind person, there was no difference between day and night, but the old man was very regular every day. He appeared with the morning sun and disappeared with the evening sun. Moreover, his position on the overpass was always fixed. No vendor who came to set up a stall on the overpass would take his place. There would even be an empty space around him. When there were many vendors, even if other places were crowded, there would be an empty space around the old man. If there were new vendors, they would be told by other vendors not to take up the space there. Moreover, after the old man left, the vendors on the overpass would pack up and leave as soon as possible even if their business was good. They had to change places to continue their business. If one day they came to the overpass and did not see the old man, they would not set up a stall there. Instead, they would choose to sell in other places until the old man appeared on the overpass again. This was a rule that the vendors on the overpass had learned for a long time. When the blind old man was there, no one would come to the overpass to drive them away. This was one of the reasons why everyone treated the blind old man with a special attitude. As for the other reason, these vendors had only heard about it. They had not seen it with their own eyes, so they could not make a conclusion. In any case, they would never offend the blind old man. Sometimes, they would give some fruits or other food to the blind old man. When they gave it to the blind old man, they did not look like they were giving alms. Instead, they were very careful. The old man held his cane and walked on the sidewalk unhurriedly. His pair of turbid black and white eyes did not open. If they were open, it would probably scare some people. The sky quickly darkened and the neon lights flashed. People who were ready to start their nightlife walked past the old man, chatting and laughing. They looked at the old man with sympathy and disdain. This was not directed at the old man, but at a blind person like the old man. Suddenly, a person rushed from behind, snatched the wooden box from the old man's hand, and ran away. This person walked past the overpass in the evening and saw the money in the old man's wooden box. At the time, there were too many people, so he did not take action. He did not care because he had more fat prey. Now that he saw it, it would be a waste if he did not take it. After all, there were a few hundred yuan inside. When the people around the old man saw this, most of them did not want to meddle. Some hot-blooded youths wanted to intervene, but in the blink of an eye, the person who snatched the box disappeared into the crowd. They could only sympathize with the blind old man. Unlike the people around him, the old man's face was very calm. He did not show any anger or sadness because the box was snatched. He only paused when the box was snatched and then continued to walk forward, as if he did not hear the discussion around him. After walking for a while, he turned into a narrow and long alley with few lights. The noise of the city at night seemed to suddenly disappear. It was like a different world from the bustling street outside the alley. The old man still walked forward unhurriedly. Not far ahead, there was a person sitting next to him. After seeing the old man, that person immediately got up and rushed over, kneeling in front of the old man. This person was the one who snatched the old man's wooden box. At the moment, he looked very embarrassed. He was beaten black and blue, and there were probably other injuries on his body. After kneeling in front of the old man, he lifted the old man's wooden box with both hands. He was shaking like a sieve, and even his voice was trembling badly. Little newcomer. I don't know. The old man did not stop because of the person in front of him. His face was still calm, and he did not say a word. He reached out to take the box and continued to walk forward, leaving the person who was kneeling on the ground and had not finished speaking. Chapter 193. The next day, when Jingtan went to Jiao Wei's small restaurant for lunch, he saw Ah Jin standing under a tree at the door. Yesterday, Ah Jin had lost his mobile phone and wallet, but he didn't immediately contact his acquaintances. Later, Jingtan took him directly to Jiao Wei's restaurant. Jiao Wei's mother's enthusiastic attitude made Ah Jin feel very embarrassed. He wanted to write a note or something, but Jiao Wei's mother said, "Black charcoal brought you here. Why do you still need to pay? This meal is on me." Now, Jiao Wei's mother was more or less certain about some things. She also heard something from Jiao Wei. Her attitude towards Jingtan was completely different from the attitude towards the cats in her hometown. After doing business for so many years, she had a bit of insight. Ah Jin didn't seem to be a bad person. Besides, a meal for one person was only about 10 yuan. There was no need to be so calculative. It was also good to borrow good karma. After eating in the restaurant last night, Ah Jin carried his guitar and went to the central square. In fact, if Jingtan hadn't brought him here, he would have gone to the square to sing first. When he had some money in the evening, he would have filled his stomach. At noon today, Jiao Wei's mother had just finished washing vegetables and was sitting at the door to rest. When school was over, there were more and more people. She had been busy until 1 o'clock, so she took the time to rest. She didn't expect to see Ah Jin. Ah Jin came to eat. This time, he paid for it himself. He also used the money he earned last night to buy some fruits as a thank you gift. After spending the money, he didn't have much left. He planned to save it for the bus fare. If it was really difficult, he planned to take a taxi back to get some money. He had to be glad that he didn't bring his ID card or bank card when he came out. There was only 2,000 yuan in his wallet. It was not a big deal to lose the money, but it was more troublesome to lose the card and certificate. When Ah Jin came over at noon, he met Mao who came to the restaurant to get food. He had seen Mao twice and knew that this person was very familiar with Celestine. Now, Mao often went to the night building with Qin Tao and the others. Celestine had also told him about Ah Jin's band. He also went to listen to a few performances and knew Ah Jin. Even if he was not sure, looking at the cat necklace hanging around Ah Jin's neck, he would know. Now that the weather was getting warmer, Mao did not sleep in. Every day at this time, he would come over to get dinner. He specially went to the supermarket to buy 2 insulated boxes. He handed over the empty lunch box in his hand and took the lunch box from Jiao Wei's mother. He put it aside and was not in a hurry to leave. He sat down and chatted with Ah Jin for a while. Hearing that Ajin had lost his wallet and mobile phone, Mao expressed his thoughts. There were indeed many thieves on the road now, especially around the school and the commercial street. Jin's situation was not uncommon. Do you want me to lend you some? Mao said casually. Jin carefully refused. The last time he saw Mao, this person was with a few playboys. He guessed that Mao was a playboy himself. If this type of person spoke inappropriately, it might cause disgust. Oh. Mao did not care about being rejected. I'm just saying. I didn't bring any money when I went out. Jin was speechless. But. Mao stretched. If you are familiar with that cat, you won't starve to death if you hold on to its leg. After saying that, Mao got up and left with the lunchbox. He did not meet Jing Tan and the others who came later. Although Mao's last sentence sounded like a joke and sounded ridiculous to others, Jin knew that it was the truth. Now that he saw the attitude of the owner and the landlady of the small restaurant towards Jing Tan, Jin could not help but sigh in his heart. This person was not as good as a cat. Look at him, he was so respected. Yesterday, Jing Tan left Jin alone in the restaurant and went to pick up little Pomelo. He did not expect to see Jin at noon when he came over. Jin said goodbye to Jing Tan and left the restaurant. He did not disturb Jing Tan and the others who were eating lunch. He was going to walk around Tsinghua University. He had never been to a university, so it was good to walk around this famous school. It was rare for him to come here. In the afternoon, when Jing Tan was about to go out for a walk, he met Jin, who was strolling around the school. Jin also suggested that Jing Tan show him around the campus. However, Jing Tan decided to try the blind old man on the overpass again today, so he ignored Jin's words. Seeing that Jing Tan did not respond, Jin thought that the cat did not understand his words. However, when he saw Jing Tan walking out, he thought for a while and followed him. Therefore, the man and the cat went to the overpass again. After getting on the overpass, to Jin's surprise, not far from the blind old man, next to the railing, were the wallet and mobile phone that he had lost yesterday. He asked a man who was selling mangoes with a basket and learned that the mobile phone and wallet were put there by the blind old man when he came over this morning. Jin opened the wallet and looked at it. Not a penny was missing. The mobile phone was turned off. After it was turned on, all the functions were intact, and the address book was not cleared. Jin was not the only one who was shocked. Jing Tan was also shocked. Could this old man really be a big shot? He had learned some things from Celestine and Yi Hao when they were chatting. Without any means, it was impossible to find the lost things so easily. However, what made Jing Tan puzzled was that didn't they say that big shots had bad tempers? Why wasn't this old man like that? He had pulled his beard yesterday, but he did not see any reaction from the old man. After that, no one came to find trouble with him. When Jing Tan and Jin came over, the old man was playing the eru. The song was different from yesterday's. When Jin listened to it, there was neither a sense of sadness nor the style of the song from yesterday's afternoon. Instead, it made people feel very calm and strange. At this time, the weather and environment should make people feel tired or irritated. Of course, for Jing Tan, who did not know how to appreciate it, it was a different story. He still felt what he should feel. Jin did not interrupt the old man. He was going to wait for the old man to finish playing the song before thanking him. He walked to the side and leaned against the railing to listen to the old man play the eru. Jin admired this blind old man. Although Jin thought that he had honed some skills, it was obviously not enough. If he played and sang here by himself, he would inevitably be affected by the ear-piercing beeping of the cars coming and going under the overpass. Some impatient drivers would frequently honk or press the horn for a long time. Those who did not have such a mentality would probably be blocked by the horn after singing the first line while playing and singing. To put it simply, it was just a matter of mentality. However, it was not easy to do what the blind old man did. It was very difficult to maintain one's original state of mind and calm down. Of course, even if he could withstand the noisy horns under the overpass, Jean would not play the guitar here. Although he did not quite understand why the surrounding peddlers treated the old man specially, he would not steal business here. This time, Jean would not play here because of the old man's return of his wallet and mobile phone. Zheng Tan did not know how to appreciate music. He walked to the old man and looked up to observe the old man's expression. It was still the same as yesterday. His eyes were closed, and there was no emotion on his face. Therefore, the long beard that swayed with the breeze was relatively conspicuous. However, after all, he had some scruples. Zheng Tan decided to wait and see first. He did not pull out the beard for the time being. He squatted next to the wooden box that was already filled with some coins and change. Since he had nothing to do, he began to count how much the old man had earned today. While he was counting the money with his head down, a shadow suddenly shrouded him. Zheng Tan looked up at the person standing in front of him. To be exact, the person was standing in front of the old man. His expression was slightly exaggerated and arrogant. Beside him was a young woman who was wearing revealing clothes and had an eye-catching figure. Some of the surrounding people's eyes fell on the woman's towering chest and her pair of long white legs. "Good job," the man said. Then he took out his wallet and took out a brand new 100 yuan note from it and threw it casually. Zheng Tan looked at the money that fell on the ground. It was not half a meter away from the wooden box, but it was at least 40 centimeters, right? He looked up at the man in front of him again. The man did not seem to have any intention of picking up the money and putting it into the wooden box. Instead, he was waiting expectantly, probably to see who would come to pick up the money at this time. This kind of behavior was insulting. Some of the people who saw this scene planned to watch a good show. Although some of them could not stand it, they did not do anything. They did not want to offend this kind of person who was obviously not short of money. Jean looked and wondered if he should come forward. Anyway, he had encountered this kind of shameful thing when he was a vagrant singer, so he was somewhat immune to it. However, when Jean took a step forward, he saw the black cat squatting next to the wooden box walk over and pull back the brand new 100 yuan note that was about to be blown away by the wind. Then it put it into the wooden box with its two front paws. After putting it in, it stretched out its paws and pushed the coin on top of the note to prevent it from being blown away by the wind. During the whole process, in addition to paying attention to the development of the matter in front of him, Jean also felt that there was a slight change in the song played by the blind old man. It changed from calm to austere, and then to gratification. However, when he listened to it again, Jean felt that there was no difference from before. Could the same song have such a change? Jean was doubtful. He did not know if it was an illusion. From the time the man in front of him threw the money to now, the old man did not stop playing the eru, as if he did not know all this. The man did not expect such a scene. He took out another 100 yuan note from his wallet and threw it on the ground. Zheng Tan continued to repeat the previous action. After putting the money into the wooden box, Zheng Tan looked at the man in front of him. "If you dare to throw it, I will dare to pick it up. Anyway, I am just a cat now. I am not afraid of being embarrassed." Moreover, the old man's harvest today was not good. Although he did not count the money, Zheng Tan roughly estimated that there were about 80 yuan. The man in front of him threw 100 yuan. It would be a waste if he did not pick it up. Zheng Tan had seen a lot of people like him who were stupid but had a lot of money. Zheng Tan used to do such stupid things. Now that he thought about it, he could not bear to look back on the past. After the man threw 500 yuan bills, the woman next to him finally couldn't take it anymore. She tugged and whispered a few words in his ear. Only then did the man put his wallet back into his pocket with a face full of displeasure and hurriedly left. It was unknown who started to laugh, but the surrounding peddlers all started to laugh. "Hey, it's good to have a cat." Zheng Tan ignored the discussion around him. He looked back at the old man, but he still did not see any change in the old man's expression. When it was almost time, Zheng Tan left the overpass. Jean followed him. He still had his wallet today. He bought the chicken fillet that he did not buy yesterday. Moreover, he was going to walk around Tsinghua University for the next 2 days. Today, when he was wandering around, he found some inspiration. Jean did not want to waste it. Not long after Zheng Tan left, the old man stopped what he was doing. Then he sat quietly with the arrow in his arms, waiting for the sunset to set. "Hey, the old man seems to have pooped for a long time this afternoon," the mango seller whispered to the toy seller next to him. "He is probably in a good mood. He earned more than 500 yuan in one afternoon," the toy seller said enviously. Chapter 194. He felt that it was not easy for Jean to find inspiration while carrying a guitar. When Zheng Tan met Jean on campus again, he took Jean to the arched doorway formed by the bamboo. However, when they arrived, there was already someone sitting there playing a guitar. Zheng Tan looked at the person. The person was slightly plump, and there was an eggplant printed on his t-shirt. His face looked quite tender, and he was probably a freshman. Seeing Jean carrying a guitar, the person called Jean over to talk. When his gaze fell on Zheng Tan, the person's face stiffened, but he did not say anything. Zheng Tan, who was about to walk away, thought for a moment, then walked to the side and jumped onto a tree to listen to the conversation between the two. This person was called Zhang Qian, and those who knew him called him Eggplant. He was a freshman in the school's guitar association. The guitar association held a school performance in May and October every year, but not everyone had the chance to go on stage. Recently, the association was selecting people to go on stage. Zhang Qian planned to practice more and strive for the opportunity to perform on stage. However, compared to Jean, Zhang Qian was still a little inexperienced in playing the guitar. "Brother, you're not bad," Zhang Qian praised. He was a little regretful when he heard that Jean was not from his school. Otherwise, he could have joined the association. He also heard that Jean had played in the square and the underground passage. With a face full of admiration, he said, "In the past, every time I saw those street artists playing the guitar, I couldn't help but want to stay beside them. My classmates even thought that I was embarrassing." Speaking of which, most of those people played quite well, and the sound in the underground passage was especially good. After sighing with emotion, Zhang Qian talked about his guitar history. "At first, I couldn't hold the strings, but after the callus, it was much better. The process was still a little painful, but men can't be afraid of pain. Be more ruthless to yourself. If you don't practice like this, you won't be able to play the guitar." Zhang Qian raised his hand to show off the callus he had painstakingly practiced. Zheng Tan glanced over. This little fatty was really easy to satisfy. After a while, Zhang Qian and Jean exchanged phone numbers and asked Jean to come to Tsinghua University next week when he was free. When the time came, he would take Jean to see the Guitar Association's performance. After taking Jean around the campus, Zheng Tan left him alone and went out to have fun. 3 days later, when Zheng Tan thought that Jean had left Tsinghua University, he saw him again. Zheng Tan did not go out for a walk that day because the sheriff and Huang were rarely let out. Depang was also chased out by his grandmother so that it could exercise more. Thus, the 4 cats walked and stopped until they reached the old tile-roofed housing area. Zheng Tan thought that he could find a quiet place with some shade and take a nap on the roof. He didn't expect to hear the sound of an electric guitar before he even got close. The sheriff's ears twitched. He wanted to turn around and leave, but he saw that Zheng Tan was still walking in that direction. The other 2 didn't leave either, so he followed. Zheng Tan was curious as to when this noisy elemental had arrived and wanted to see what was going on. There was a tile-roofed room that was used to store sundries. There were more than 10 students inside, and the sound came from this tile-roofed room. The other 3 stopped not far away. Only Zheng Tan approached, jumped on the windowsill, and looked inside. The window was open, and Zheng Tan was standing near a big table. There was a pot of flowers on the table, which just blocked Zheng Tan. The people inside did not notice him, nor did they have the mind to. They were all staring at the 2 people in the middle of the room. There was a guitar on the table by the window. There was no one in front of the table, so Zheng Tan could see the situation in the room. 2 young people were standing in the middle of the room, and one of them was Ajin. The other person was wearing a black vest and had dyed yellow hair. His hair was still a little long and was tied into a small braid. The two of them were playing the electric guitar. Zheng Tan did not know what it felt like to play the electric guitar, but seeing that the two of them were sweating, he guessed that it was not easy. The people around them, including Zhang Qian, whom Zheng Tan had seen before, were all excited. They were so excited that their faces were flushed red, as if they were trying their best to endure something. Some of them were even gesturing with their hands unconsciously. When the two of them finally stopped, the people standing at the side started to talk, and a few of them even screamed. Sure enough, outsiders could only watch the show. Although Zheng Tan felt that the two of them were very good at playing the guitar, he was not as excited as the others. However, the two of them were really *king fast when playing the guitar. "President, it's him, right?" a tall girl with a ponytail said. The braided man in the vest who had played the guitar with Ajin nodded. He said a few more words to Ajin and received a call. He asked Ajin, Zhang Qian, and two other people to stay here and help look after things. They had to leave for a while. The original training place of the Guitar Association was being renovated by the school, so they had to move temporarily. They applied to the school for a house in the old tiled housing area as a temporary gathering place. When the time came, they would move back when the renovation was done. Listening to the four people who stayed in the room, Zheng Tan found out that it was about the performance of the Guitar Association next week. The opening song they had prepared was a double guitar canon. Unfortunately, the guitarist who had worked with the president of the association had injured his fingers and had to be replaced. However, the association could not find a satisfactory candidate, so they had to settle for the next best thing, which was to find external help. Zhang Qian contacted Ajin. 7 external help from other schools' guitar association and Ajin had been selected. After a while of playing the guitar, the decision-makers of the association had finally decided on Ajin. Hearing that Ajin had been chosen, Zhang Qian was very happy. In contrast, Ajin was much calmer. He knew that this would be the result after listening to the others play. Those who could stay in the night building to perform were basically professionals, and their skills were not good. After being in the night building for so long, they were better than most people in the school. In fact, Ajin did not immediately agree to come and try. After all, once he decided, he had to come often to train before the performance. In addition, there were several important performances in the night building, so time was very tight. After thinking for a long time, he decided to come. Now, he did not regret agreeing to come. After stepping into this complicated society and jumping into this big divat, it was difficult to stay out of it. Especially during these days of working in the night building, Ajin understood the difficulties. He had seen some of the filth behind the glamour of the circle, but after getting used to it, he found that pure passion was missing. And here, he found the purity that he had lost. The 4 people in the room were still talking about some things related to the guitar with great interest. Zheng Tan did not understand what they were talking about. Zheng Tan had not seen the part of playing the guitar that Zhang Qian had mentioned. Therefore, Zheng Tan was really not interested in the content of these people's conversation. Just as he was about to get down from the windowsill and find another place to sleep, Zheng Tan found that the sheriff and Huang had both come over. It was probably because there was no one playing the guitar now that they had the courage to come closer. They jumped on the windowsill and looked inside the room curiously. Depang looked at the 3 cats on the windowsill, yawned lazily, then slowly walked over and jumped on the windowsill. The 4 cats squatted side by side on the windowsill, and the people inside immediately noticed them. The one with the biggest reaction was Zhang Qian. When this guy saw the 4 cats, his first reaction was to immediately grab the cup on the table and put it into his arms. The 3 people, including Ajin, were very surprised by Zhang Qian's behavior. "Why are you reacting like this, eggplant?" one of them asked. Zhang Qian pouted at the 4 cats on the windowsill. "The painful experience of military training." The 2 people said, "Oh." Seeing that Ajin was still confused, they told him the interesting story during the military training. During the military training, Zhang Qian's square formation was not far from Jiao Wei and the others. Zhang Qian was also one of the victims of the incident where the sheriff and Huang pushed the cup. Zhang Qian's favorite kettle was pushed down the stairs by Huang, and a large piece of paint fell off. Zhang Qian was so distressed that he lost 2 pounds. While the two people were talking, the sheriff, who had been locked up at home for so long, was full of energy and had even more cheap hands. He stepped on the big table from the windowsill and came to the guitar placed there. The 3 people in the room looked at Ah Jin. The guitar was Ah Jin's. He had played it when he came to this tile-roofed house. After that, he played the electric guitar, so he temporarily put the guitar here without putting it in a bag. He had 3 guitars, and this one was the cheapest among them. It was more common and was similar to the ones used by some students in the association. He did not dare to carry the expensive ones around, but even so, it did not mean that he did not care. However, looking at the black cat squatting on the windowsill, Ah Jin hesitated for a moment. If Zheng Tan were not here, Ah Jin would have rushed to protect the guitar. Zheng Tan did not stop the sheriff. He was more curious about what the sheriff would do next. The 4 people in the room did not make a sound. They all stared at the sheriff. For a moment, compared to the white-hot atmosphere of the electric guitar 10 minutes ago, it was really in line with the silence of the old tile-roofed house area. The sheriff tilted his head in front of the guitar and looked at it. His tail swayed slowly, and then he raised his paw to hook a metal string on the guitar. The sound of the metal string vibrating made the sheriff jump back with his back arched. After the sound quieted down, he boldly went up to the guitar again. He seemed to be addicted to playing and continued to raise his paw to hook the metal string. He did not press the string, and the sound was just an empty string sound. To Zheng Tan, it was pure noise. Moreover, the sheriff's behavior was just a toy that he found out of curiosity. It did not have any sense of music or art. To Zheng Tan's surprise, Ah Jin did not stop the sheriff from destroying his guitar. Instead, he immediately put down the guitar score in his hand, took out a small notebook and pen from the guitar bag on his back, and began to write something. Perhaps it was because he had a good time playing the guitar with others, but Ah Jin was now in a very good state. After he started writing, he had been immersed in his own creative world. Perhaps, the noise of the sheriff's playing also entered his creative world. Zhang Qian walked over to take a look, and then his mouth was wide open. He quietly walked back to his original place and sat down. He mouthed to the other 2 people, "Compose." Zheng Tan also saw Zhang Qian's mouth shape. Looking at the sheriff who was playing the guitar and making noise, and then looking at Ah Jin who was immersed in composing, Zheng Tan could not help but wonder if he not only had no musical talent, but also had a distorted appreciation of music. However, when he saw Zhang Qian and the other 2 people's expressions, he suddenly felt that Ah Jin seemed to be really talented. Otherwise, how could he get inspiration from the sheriff's noisy playing? Someone once said that cats were the poets of the city's melancholy. They were born to be maverick wandering artists. Zheng Tan had never thought so, but now it seemed that it might be true. It was just that he did not understand the art of cats. Chapter 195. Zhang Qian and the others gathered there, admiring Ah Jin for being able to compose under such circumstances. However, they had only glanced at what Ah Jin had just written and did not look at the score carefully. Without permission, they felt that if they looked at it rashly, they would be suspected of plagiarism. Therefore, during the discussion, they mainly talked about where Ah Jin had gotten his inspiration from. Was it really that cat? Zheng Tan curiously went over to take a look. Seeing that it was Zheng Tan, Ah Jin, who was about to close the book, stopped temporarily. He even handed the book to Zheng Tan so that Zheng Tan could read it. Zhang Qian and the others saw this and did not understand Ah Jin's behavior. Why was he so nice to a cat? However, they could not say anything. After all, they were not familiar with each other and did not need to care about everything. Zheng Tan looked at it. Other than the name of the song, he did not understand anything else. He only knew that it was a simplified score that he had seen in a primary school music book. After looking at it, Zheng Tan lost interest and returned to the windowsill. Ah Jin, do you like to use simplified scores when composing? A student asked. He was used to looking at guitar hexagons and had more contact with staves. He did not know how to react when he suddenly saw simplified scores. After all, many people felt that staves were more professional and presentable. As for guitar hexagons used to record fingering, because of the association itself, they used them more often. Yes, because I did not go to university, I did not receive any professional education in the beginning. I learned guitar skills from a small, unknown band. Later on, I studied more on my own. When I was trying to compose, I used simplified scores. Later on, I learned all kinds of things, but I am still more used to simplified scores. Jean did not hide the fact that he had not gone to university. After entering the night building, there were some classes arranged there to improve his professionalism. However, Jean was more used to using simplified scores, which he had the most contact with. Basically, he used simplified scores when composing. Many people in the Guitar Association now knew that Jean was not a member of the Guitar Association of other schools, but they only knew that he was in a professional band. As for the details, they did not know. Moreover, there were too many small, unknown bands in Chuhua. Seeing Jin's age, other people thought that he was a member of a small band that was unknown and would disband at any time. Therefore, they did not investigate further. Zheng Tan did not know much about music scores. However, other than simple music scores, staff scores, and guitar scores, Zheng Tan had once seen a fat old lady writing music scores. However, it was filled with words such as close, 4, 1, up, ruler, work, fan, 6, 5, B, and so on. Zheng Tan still did not know how to evaluate Jin's song about cats. There were many people in the world who evaluated cats and analyzed them. However, from the cats that Zheng Tan had met, many people thought too deeply about themselves and did not look at things from the perspective of cats. Even Zheng Tan now found it difficult to understand the thoughts of the sheriff, De Pang, and Huang. Just like Jiao Pa once said, scientifically speaking, you can't use human thinking to interpret cat thinking. Zheng Tan was only using human thinking. No matter what, Zheng Tan was still looking forward to Jin's cat's fantasy. He hoped to hear it the next time he went to the night building. However, after this, it would probably still need to be modified. After that, he still had to consider the arrangement and lyrics. He probably would not be able to hear it in the near future. As for the Guitar Association's school performance in May, Zheng Tan was a little interested in watching it. Unfortunately, it was at night. If Zheng Tan was still grounded by Jiao Ma at night, it would be hard to say. Not only Zheng Tan, but the other 3 cats were also grounded at night. It was already a mercy to be released during the day. In the following week, Zheng Tan's performance was not bad in Jiao Ma's eyes. He stayed at home every night and did not go out. He also came back on time during the day and did not cause any trouble. Zheng Tan was really well behaved during this time. At least, he thought that he was quite well behaved. After going to the construction site to see the progress, he went to the overpass to help the old man gain popularity. When Zheng Tan was there, the old man's wooden box would have more money. Sometimes, people were not as attractive as animals. Zheng Tan was mainly curious about the old man's identity. However, after staying for more than a week, she did not see any underlings. It was true that the surrounding peddlers were in awe of this old man. The day of the Guitar Association's performance was Friday. Zheng Tan left the overpass earlier than usual. He was going to the school's main sports field to take a look. Zheng Tan decided to go out that night. It was Jiao Yuan who suggested that they go to the Guitar Association's performance that night. Xiong, Suan, and the others discussed contacting the children in the courtyard to go to the performance that night. For boys, the guitar was more attractive. There were also people from the West District, including little Pomelo's classmates. Zheng Tan was prepared to go out with them that night. That way, the chances of Jiao Ma agreeing to it would be higher. In fact, the Guitar Association's performance was not very attractive to Zheng Tan. After all, it was just a performance by amateur students. Zheng Tan had seen many professional performances at the night building. Therefore, Jingtan's main purpose for going out with Jiao Yuan and the others was not to watch the performance. He wanted to start something. As the saying went, if there was a first, there would be a second, and if there was a second, there would be a third. After going out that night, the opportunity to go out at night would be closer. Jingtan found it rather boring to watch soap operas with Jiao Ma every night. As for the Guitar Association's performance, from a layman's point of view, Jingtan felt that those people had indeed spent a lot of effort on it. Even if their skills were lacking, the students watching the performance on the sports field did not care. Coupled with the atmosphere, it could be considered a success. The opening performance of Canon by Jin and the president of the Guitar Association added a lot of points to the performance. With a good start, it was also a boost to morale. Other than the opening performance, Jin spent most of the time backstage. The students needed a chance to prove themselves. The performance started at 7:30 and ended at 9:30. Before the performance, Jin had been invited to the Guitar Association's celebratory banquet. Therefore, even if there was nothing else for him to do, Jin did not leave. Since it was Friday and tomorrow was a weekend, the Guitar Association members were prepared to celebrate after the performance in the evening. After all, most of them did not have classes the next day, so they could play to their heart's content. The president of the Guitar Association, the person who had played guitar with Jin, had been forced to drink too much. Some of the things that he had not said before were now out of his mouth. Jin, when you were at the night building, did you often see those masters? Jin was surprised. He had not mentioned this before. He did not expect to be recognized. Not many people in the Guitar Association knew about the night building. When those who had some understanding of the night building heard the president's words, they looked at Jin differently. That was the night building. The people who could perform there were definitely skilled. They were definitely not small bands that could disband at any time. Moreover, many of them had great potential. They could even sign a contract with some companies and release records. Who knew when they would become popular? Yes, that's true. The East Palace of the Night Building often has masters performing there. Some world-class masters will also perform there. However, the East Palace is not easy to enter, Jin said. A person who had been going to the Night Building recently could not help but say, the Night Building has 4 districts, the East, West, North, and South Palaces. Of course, it's difficult to enter the East Palace. The level of consumption there is not something we can afford. Moreover, I heard that there are often some well-known people in the circle among the audience there. They are real experts. At this point, the person's face was full of yearning. However, he immediately looked at Jin. What's the name of your band? Did you perform recently? I don't know if I missed it. I played there every night last week. These words sounded like he was doubting the authenticity of Jin's performance at the night building. Jin did not care. When he was about to answer, the president of the association spoke first. He pointed at the necklace Jin was wearing. New boy, I remember this is the team emblem. Jin understood. As expected, he had guessed it based on the team emblem. We're performing in the South District now, Jin said. The South District? So it's an expert. No wonder I didn't see it. I've always been in the North District, the person said in surprise. The resident singer in the North District was at the bottom of the night building's 4 districts. At the same time, it was also the place with the lowest consumption. However, he did not expect Jin, who was about the same age as them, to be able to enter the South District, which was of a higher level than the North District. After learning about the night building, the others also participated in the discussion. The celebration banquet turned into the association's members learning from Jin. Jin did not hide anything. He was also willing to share some of his experience with these people. Finally, before Jin left, everyone asked him if he had anything else to say. Jin thought for a moment and said, treat that black cat better. Everyone thought that Jin said this because he liked black cats. Seeing that the team emblem was a black cat, even if some people were a little resistant to black cats, at this time, they promised to take care of them. Seeing that these people obviously did not take it to heart, Ajin opened his mouth but still did not explain. These people did not know the meaning behind this sentence. Many people here wanted to ride on Ajin's coattails, but Ajin thought that he was not a big shot in the night building. Even now, in the south district of the night building, his band was ranked last. If there was anyone here who could ride on that cat's coattails, they would be more useful than Ajin. The cat was familiar with the big boss of the night building. For it, watching the performance of the East Palace was as easy as eating peanuts. As for whether or not the people here could benefit from the cat, that would depend on their luck. While the students of the Guitar Association of Tsinghua University were discussing the night building, in a private room on the third floor of the night building, Yihao, Ranchi, Leopard, and a few other trusted subordinates were looking at a document that had just been brought over. After digesting that huge amount of gold, Yihao had more projects to invest in, and there were still some troubles to deal with behind the scenes. In the past, he had always avoided conflicts, but now it was inevitable that he would directly confront them. Whether they would cooperate or be enemies depended on that person's attitude. Therefore, Yihao finally decided to pay a visit to that person who was contemporaneous with Master Tang VII. This time, he did not want to rely on his relationship with Master Tang VII. He planned to face it himself. When Yihao opened the latest investigation document with a cup of coffee in his hand trembled and the coffee in the cup spilled on his suit. Leopard and Ranchi next to him were puzzled. What could make Yihao, who was always calm and collected, show such a constipated expression on his face? Chapter 196. In the folder, there was a photo. The background of the photo was a bridge, and the subject was an old man sitting under a big black umbrella, holding an arrow. What made Yihao and the others uneasy was that in the photo, the black cat was squatting next to the wooden box and yawning with its mouth wide open, baring its fangs. The description under the photo showed that the cat was called Black Charcoal, and it was raised by an associate professor named Zhao from the Life Sciences Institute of Tsinghua University. In fact, even without the detailed description, Yihao and the others knew which cat it was. In this world, which cat called Black Charcoal could cause so much trouble? Ranchi wanted to bang his head on the coffee table. He wanted to express his thoughts, but Leopard spoke first. You can really see this guy everywhere you go. Yihao put down the folder in his hand and put the coffee cup on the coffee table. He raised his hand and rubbed between his eyebrows. After a long silence, he suddenly smiled helplessly and picked up his phone to make a call. Hello, Celestine, do me a favor. When will you bring the black cat out to meet? What? Grounded? Yihao listened to Celestine and frowned. *CK, if he had known, he would have sent someone to find out who the cat trainer was and deal with it secretly, so that he wouldn't have caused so much trouble at Tsinghua University. If the black cat was grounded, when would it be able to come out to talk? After knowing the reason why Yihao wanted to find the cat, Celestine decided to go to Tsinghua University to try. The cat trainer incident had happened a long time ago, and the people in the school compound didn't know much about it. They wouldn't keep the cat at home forever, right? So, on a nice Saturday, Celestine showed up at the Jiao family and smiled harmlessly at Jiao Ma, who didn't look too good. Although Jiao Ma wasn't too happy about it, she still agreed to let Celestine take Jingtan out to play when she saw the look of anticipation in his eyes. Sigh, it was not easy to be cooped up at home for a period of time, but the moment he went out, he became wild again. Wei Ling heaved a sigh of relief when he heard Mama Jiao's agreement. If the owner didn't agree, that cat would definitely not go to the night tower. If she agreed, it would save him a lot of trouble. That night, in Yihao's villa. Yihao and Leopard had been waiting there for a long time. Even Ranchi was rarely there. He was reluctant to see the cat, but he was curious as to how the cat knew that person. It was said that a bear has the heart of a leopard, and it seemed that this cat's courage was not small either. On the way, Jingtan had heard Celestine mention a little about the reason why Yihao was looking for him this time. However, was the Lord Kuan they were talking about that blind old man? He had heard that he was a powerful person in the past, at the same time as Master Tang VII and Nye 19. However, why did Jingtan feel that this old man was doing much worse than the other two? Not to mention Master Tang the Seventh, she had also heard Yi Hao and the others mention Nia 19 when they were playing in the night building. A person who could raise a super cat and enjoy a high-end lifestyle obviously wouldn't have a bad life. In comparison, what about this Lord Kun? He was dressed like a poor person, looked old, and was blind. Even if he was a person who could kill gods and Buddhas in the past, now he could only play the eru on the bridge. Or perhaps, the truth was not as it seemed on the surface. Without the experience of Jin finding his wallet and phone, Jingtian wouldn't have thought that the old man would be so powerful. Now that he saw the reaction of Celestine and the others, the old man was still not simple. Sure enough, the thoughts of big shots were always unpredictable. Take Feng Xiaokong for example. He was obviously a super rich person, but he still went to the streets to sell his art. Each of them was like a cat, full of strange thoughts. When they arrived at Yi Hao's villa, Jingtian jumped directly onto an empty sofa and found a comfortable position to lie down, waiting for Yi Hao's next words. In any case, Yi Hao had a request, so Jingtian wasn't in a hurry. Seeing the cat in front of him find a place to lie down without any reservation, Yi Hao glanced at it and didn't say anything. This cat was getting bolder and bolder. It was even more casual than when the Monsignor was here. Yi Hao handed the folder in his hand to Celestine. Some of the confidential information had been taken out and shown to Celestine the recent results of Lord Kuen's investigation. The hall was very quiet. Only the sound of Celestine flipping through the materials and Yi Hao drinking coffee could be heard. Yi Hao had been so busy that he got tired easily. During this period of time, he was used to drinking coffee to refresh himself. The health doctor didn't recommend drinking it for a long time, but Yi Hao had no choice. He had to get through this period of time, especially this time. It was good to be able to have a good talk with Lord Kuen, but this man was famous for being difficult to talk to back then. He didn't know what would happen after he became like this. It seemed like there was a big change, but no one could say for sure. It was rare for there to be a breakthrough, so Yi Hao was ready to give it a try. Celestine didn't agree with Yi Hao's suggestion before. He didn't move around Chu Hua before, so his understanding of Lord Kuen came from Yi Hao. Even if he didn't know Lord Kuen's current situation, if Lord Kuen was a toothless tiger, he was still a tiger. It would be easy for him to trample a cat to death. However, looking at the materials in his hand, Celestine's eyes twitched. He finally understood why Yi Hao had this idea. You even pulled Lord Kuen's beard? Celestine looked at Jingtian, who was sitting on the sofa, in disbelief. Yi Hao supported his forehead with one hand. He wanted to agree and say, it's not easy for this cat to be alive and kicking now. However, thinking about Lord Kuen's attitude in the investigation, Yi Hao chose to remain silent. What was that man thinking? Some of the investigation information was obtained from the vendors on the overpass, so the information about Jingtian's presumptuous behavior in front of the old man was listed in the information. The usual information was very detailed. Just by looking at this, it was impossible to associate the old man and the information with the once all-powerful Lord Kuen. If Lord Kuen's temperament hadn't changed drastically, then Lord Kuen must have treated this cat differently. Putting down the folder in his hand, Celestine leaned against the back of the sofa and tapped his fingers on the armrest. How about this? Let it send a letter to Lord Kuen to test Lord Kuen's attitude. At the same time, see how the old man's temper is now. According to the investigation information, Lord Kuen didn't have a cell phone or any other contact numbers on him. Lord Tang the Seventh might have one, but Yi Hao didn't want to ask for it. Moreover, it was broad daylight, so Yi Hao couldn't go to the overpass directly to look for Lord Kuen. He didn't want to expose himself and let others know before the two sides reached an agreement. Hearing Celestine's suggestion, Yi Hao nodded. That works too. After making the decision, Yi Hao promised Jingtian that if he helped him this time, he would give Jingtian a private room on the third floor of the night building, just like Celestine's. Of course, it would be smaller than Celestine's, but it would still belong to Jingtian. When the time came, even if Jingtian brought his own people, he would have a place to stay. He wouldn't need to borrow Celestine's room. Jingtian didn't immediately express his opinion. He lay in the distance, deep in thought, until Yi Hao placed a short letter in braille in front of Jingtan. Jingtan didn't understand this, so Celestine explained the contents of the letter to him. It was a letter of visit and didn't say anything else. Feeling that it wasn't a big deal, Jingtan expressed his opinion. Thus, at around 3:00 on Sunday afternoon, Jingtan arrived at the Tianxiao as usual. Celestine followed behind him and watched from a short distance to prevent any accidents from happening. Yi Hao and a few others were watching the progress of the battle from a building. Jingtan was also a little nervous. He put the bankcard-sized envelope in his mouth on Mr. Kuen's lap. Jingtan only reluctantly held the envelope in his mouth after Celestine and Yi Hao repeatedly assured him that it was clean. There was no other way. His intermittent mysophobia was acting up. The old man looked like he was about to play the eru. After Jingtan put down the letter, he opened the envelope and touched the words on it. Then, he put the letter in his pocket and hugged the eru. He didn't play it and just sat there with his eyes closed as if he was asleep. Jingtan didn't feel that the old man had any ill intentions towards him, so he boldly went to the wooden box to see how the old man's business was today. With one look, Jingtan realized that something was wrong. F***ck, there were actually game coins. Which little bastard threw them in? Jingtan raised his paw and flipped through the box. He realized that there were quite a lot of game coins inside. No wonder he felt that there were more coins inside today. They were all fakes. Some of the game coins looked like 1 yuan coins, while others looked like 50-cent coins. If one didn't pay attention, they would really confuse the game coins with real coins. No wonder Jiao Yuan complained at home that day that someone used game coins to buy steamed buns at school. The steamed buns seller didn't even realize it. Without hesitation, Jingtan reached out his paw and fished out the game coins one by one and threw them out of the wooden box. For a moment, the game coins clinked as they fell to the ground. The bridge, especially the place where the old man was sitting, was paved with anti-slip materials. The game coins that were thrown out didn't roll far. They basically landed near where Elder Kuen was sitting. The surrounding peddlers didn't dare to go over to take a look. Today's weather was too good. At this moment, the sun was shining brightly. Many people came and went in a hurry with umbrellas and sun hats. They didn't pay attention to other details and just thought that the cat was playing. Cats, after all, were all so annoying. Even if someone noticed the game coins on the ground, they would just smile and walk away. Therefore, for a moment, no one pointed out the actual situation. When the old man, who was leaning against the railing, heard the sound of the game coins falling to the ground, his ears twitched. The stiffness on his face relaxed slightly, but it was hard for others to notice. Jingtan, on the other hand, was happily fishing out the game coins. He rummaged through the wooden box loudly. Celestine, who was standing not far away, and Yi Hao, who was nervously watching from a building, didn't see that the game coins were very similar to coins. They didn't even think about it. When they saw Jingtan's behavior, they almost vomited blood. "Boss, is that cat looking for trouble again?" Leopard stood behind Yi Hao and said with a wooden face. What if the old man was in a bad mood and wanted to accept a visit, but changed his mind at the last minute and rejected it? Leopard felt a headache just thinking about it. Yi Hao's face twisted. He was now regretting it. Should he not have asked the cat to do this? Not only did he not get any benefits, but he also made him hate him. Celestine squatted at the corner of the bridge and scratched his head in distress. He looked at the cat, who was happily fishing for the coins, and felt a stomachache. There must be something wrong with the breakfast he had this morning. "Young man, do you want some sponge cake?" The auntie selling sponge cake looked at Celestine with a smile. The golden tooth in her mouth shone brightly under the sunlight. Celestine. His stomach hurt even more. Compared to Celestine and Yi Hao's conflicted feelings, Master Kuen, who was sitting there, adjusted his posture and played the eru. Chapter 197. Yi Hao's conflicted mood improved a little when a 10-year-old child passed by. Walking past all these people, only the child mentioned the important point of, "Those are game coins on the ground." What really reassured Yi Hao was the phone call he received that night. Yi Hao had given a number in the Braille letter. That night, when Yi Hao was reading a report, he received a call from a stranger. The person was probably Master Kuen's subordinate. He gave the time and place, and his tone was monotonous. Yi Hao couldn't tell what the other party's attitude was. However, to be able to get a reply and agree to visit was a good sign. The two parties agreed to meet in the afternoon 2 days later. Yi Hao cleared the time on that day and didn't go out. He discussed the meeting with a few of his confidants in the afternoon. They didn't dare to go over unprepared. What if they couldn't come back? The other party wasn't someone to be trifled with. On the second day of delivering the letter, Zheng Tan did the same as before. He strolled around the campus in the morning and ran over to the bridge in the afternoon. He was still very curious about the old man that even Yi Hao was afraid of. The reason Zheng Tan still had the guts to come over after knowing the old man's identity was mainly because Master Kuen didn't show any ill intentions. Sometimes, Zheng Tan couldn't help but wonder if his presence was too weak. Or maybe the other party just didn't want to be serious with him and let him do whatever he wanted. He had heard people say that when the forest was big, there would be all kinds of birds. When the girl was beautiful, there would be all kinds of suitors. When the power was big, there would be all kinds of people around you. Therefore, one of the characteristics of a big shot was that he could accommodate all kinds of people. It was hard to guess the thoughts of a big shot. After half a day, the atmosphere between the old man and the cat was still the same as before. No one threw any game coins at him. Zheng Tan lay on the side and slept for the entire afternoon. As the sun set, Zheng Tan left the bridge and returned to Tsinghua University. The old man sitting on the bridge packed up his things as usual. He carried the shabby-looking wooden box and the blind guide cane and left. Walking along the street, they passed by familiar shops. Some of the shop assistants there remembered the old man. Every day at this time, they would see the blind old man pass by. In the night, the old man walked on the sidewalk. A black car slowly drove over and approached the sidewalk. This way, the distance between the black car and the old man was only about 1 meter. The black sedan drove very slowly. Even if it overtook the old man, it would stop in front of him for a while and wait for the old man to get on before driving off. The window of the back seat was lowered, and the people inside looked at the blind old man walking on the sidewalk. They were silent, as if they were thinking about what to say. The person sitting in the back seat was also an old man. However, compared to Lord Kuen, this person looked like someone who lived a rich life. In the eyes of the bystanders, these two old men were people who lived in completely different social classes and were completely unrelated. When the old man in the car looked out of the window, there was a cat lying beside him that was obviously bigger than a normal cat. However, this cat was very well behaved. Although it looked out of the window curiously, it had no intention of jumping out, nor did it meow. This continued for 10 minutes before the old man in the car finally said, "It's time to get off work, old Huang." His tone was full of sarcasm and mockery. Lord Kuen's surname was Huang. Back then, people called him the local tyrant because of his surname. Hearing the old man in the car, Lord Kuen's expression did not change at all. It was as if he already knew that this person would say that. He did not reply and continued walking at his original speed. This was not the first time these two old men had such a conversation. The old man in the car retracted his gaze from the window. The driver sped up and quickly left Lord Kuen behind. I really don't know why he made himself like this. Wouldn't it be better if he just enjoyed his life? He doesn't know how to use the resources he has. The old man in the car sneered. Just like what Tang Chi said, there were not many people left from that era. Those who stayed in Tsinghua City were only a few old men. The few old men had never stopped quarreling with each other. However, no one purposely came to find trouble with Huang Kuen. At most, they would say a few words or have some small fights to pass the time. They would not do anything serious here. Even Tang Chi was no exception. When Tang Chi retired behind the scenes, he had instructed Yi how to treat this Lord Kuen well. Master 19, not everyone can enjoy life as much as you do, the driver in front said. Nia 19 liked people to praise him for enjoying life. His style was indeed like that. Therefore, in many people's eyes, Nia 19 was always dignified and glamorous. Many people envied him because he was old but still had young women by his side. Old but vigorous. This was a phrase that people often used when talking about Nia 19. However, when Nia 19 thought about Huang Kuan's attitude of ignoring him, he became angry. That old fart was so arrogant. The driver looked at Nia 19 in the back seat through the rearview mirror and continued, Lord 19, I saw Lord Kuan today. He looks old and clumsy. Is there a problem with his health? Nia 19 smiled sarcastically, that guy's life is tough. When the fight was at its peak, everyone thought that this guy was dead for sure. Anyone could be lucky, but this guy definitely wouldn't be let go. But he's alive and well now. The driver heard Nia 19's tone. It didn't seem like he was angry at him. Based on his understanding of this boss, he should be thinking the same thing as him. He was just saying that. Therefore, the driver continued, although he's alive, he's been blind for so many years. I remember that he's about the same age as you, right? But looking at him today, he doesn't have the arrogance of the Lord Kuan. And isn't the one in charge of that area now Lord Kuan's godson? Speaking of which, Lord Kuan is just a retired emperor with no real power. In the driver's opinion, in this circle, even blood-related people could kill, let alone people who weren't related by blood. That was even more unreliable. No real power? Humph. Nia 19 snorted and didn't explain. However, the driver felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that his boss was really angry this time. He quickly shut up and didn't say anything else. After a while, Nia 19 teased the cat lying next to him. He put his finger into the cat's mouth. The cat hugged Nia 19's finger and bit it. The cat's teeth, which had been bitten by dogs, gently scraped Nia 19's finger. However, it didn't bite down. It didn't dare. This cat is very obedient. Even if I put my finger in its mouth, it wouldn't dare to bite. Although Nia 19's words sounded calm, the driver felt his scalp tingle. He didn't dare to say a word. Perhaps, if Lord Kuan had died back then, his boss would be more relaxed now. Lord Kuan's existence was a thorn in his boss's throat. Yet, he couldn't pull it out. He didn't dare to pull it out. Zheng Tan didn't know about the meeting between Yi Hao and Lord Kuan. Celestine and Yi Hao didn't mention it to him. Zheng Tan didn't want to get involved either. Anyway, those people were all people who did great things. It was better for his cat to think about how to pass the time. Therefore, on the afternoon of Yi Hao and Lord Kuan's meeting, Zheng Tan came to the overpass as usual. He happened to see the old man packing up his things. He found it strange that the old man was packing up so early today. Unexpectedly, when the old man passed by Zheng Tan, he said, "If you're curious, you can come and play with me." Zheng Tan stood where he was, wondering how the old man knew he was here. He didn't have the chance to fish for the coins in the wooden box today. The sound of his footsteps was also very soft, but the old man could still accurately identify his location. Seeing that the old man had already gotten off the overpass, Zheng Tan didn't think about the problem anymore. Then, he was puzzled. Did the old man mean for him to go over and take a look? If he followed him, he might be able to find out more about the old man. It was rare for an important person to make a tactful invitation. At least, in Zheng Tan's eyes, it was an invitation. He quickly followed him. Then, he realized that this was the first time he had heard the old man speak. He followed the old man through the bustling street and turned into an alley. After walking for a while, they arrived in front of a house. Without the old man knocking, the door was opened from the inside. Zheng Tan saw a young man with a very serious expression. He was respectful to the old man. However, when his gaze swept past Zheng Tan, he didn't seem surprised to see a cat here. He only paused for a moment before following the old man inside. Zheng Tan looked around and followed him in. The outside of the house looked very shabby. He didn't expect the inside to be okay. It was just okay, nothing special. Some rich and powerful old men liked the layout of the house with a classical charm, while some old men liked the modern style. However, Jingtan didn't know which style it belonged to. Overall, the layout was very simple. Obviously, the owner didn't care about the materials that were used to keep up appearances. Thinking that the old man was blind, Jingtan felt relieved. Moreover, if he only looked at the back, Jingtan couldn't tell that the old man was blind at all. No one helped him, and the old man didn't stumble. His steps were still calm, and when he walked, he accurately placed the wooden box, the big black umbrella, and other things in the right place. He didn't let anyone help him at all. Further inside, there was a small living room. Yi Hao, Ran Qi, and the others were inside. Seeing Master Kun come in, Yi Hao quickly got up. As soon as he opened his mouth, he was choked by the black cat behind Master Kun. Not only Yi Hao, but Ran Qi and Leopard also felt like a herd of alpacas were running over. Ran Qi looked at Leopard and said with his eyes, "Boss didn't inform this cat, did he?" Leopard, "Definitely not." Today's plan was indeed very good. They had considered many ways to deal with different situations. They even analyzed various psychological tactics in depth. However, no one had considered this cat. In Ran Qi's opinion, cats were always an uncertain factor, let alone this cat. Who knew what would happen with this cat present? What did Master Kun mean by this? Jingtan looked at the expressions of Yi Hao and the others. He pulled his ears and walked to the side. "Dislike my ass? Do you think I care?" They chatted among themselves. Jingtan didn't want to join them. He planned to find a place to lie down. He was a little tired from walking all the way here. When he came, Jingtan thought of many possibilities. However, when he really came, he didn't feel the pressure he expected. He also didn't feel any malice or danger around him. Although he couldn't let his guard down, at least he was mentally more relaxed. Jingtan saw a wooden table by the window. It was more than 3 meters away from them. There was also a vase with rich bamboo. It was perfect for lying down and sleeping. Therefore, he got up and jumped. Chapter 198. Ran Qi had been using the corner of his eye to look over there, wondering why Elder Kun had brought the cat over. The next moment, he noticed the situation over at the table. His heart also swayed along with the vase on the table. Only when the vase stabilized did he let out a sigh of relief. Yi Hao, of course, also noticed it, but he didn't show it on his face. In Yi Hao's mind, cats were not human beings after all, nor were they well-trained warriors. They would not listen to you and restrict your words and actions. Perhaps they would bark wildly when they shouldn't, or mess around with things they shouldn't do, which would cause a planned and arranged thing to collapse directly. If it were other cats, it might be a small problem, but Yi Hao knew how capable this black cat was from the day he met it. Yi Hao took a deep breath and sorted out his emotions. He continued to talk about the cooperation with Elder Kun. It was said that the first spurt of energy, the second spurt of energy, and the third spurt of energy. It wasn't easy to be fully prepared to face Huang Kun, who used to be a big shot, so he couldn't appear weak. He had a few projects under his control, such as the small commercial plaza near Tsinghua University that was under construction. When the time came, he would definitely come into contact with the people here. It would be better to discuss it in advance before things went wrong. That way, it would be easier for everyone to resolve any problems. Conflicts of interest were always the most important conflicts. However, how to distribute the benefits was the reason why Yi Hao was sitting there under pressure. However, just as Yi Hao was talking about the distribution of benefits and was about to start psychological warfare, there was a shattering sound. The somewhat tense atmosphere was fiercely impacted. The veins on Yi Hao's forehead popped. He forced himself to remain calm on the surface, but he was already cursing in his heart. Can't this damn cat know its place? Jingtan looked at the broken vase and the mess on the table. He then looked at the expressions of the people over there. Other than Elder Kun, the others, including Yi Hao and the people around Elder Kun, couldn't help but have some other emotions in their eyes even if they didn't show it on their faces. He pulled his ears and jumped down from the table. It was better to find another place to lie down. The atmosphere here was not suitable. Zheng Tan really didn't do it on purpose. He was lying on the side and was about to fall asleep. Then, a green bean fly came out of nowhere and kept buzzing in his ear. When Zheng Tan raised his paw to chase it away, he used a little too much force. Plus, he was stronger than the average cat, so he didn't restrain himself and knocked the vase down. Zheng Tan tried walking around, but he didn't see anyone stopping him. Lord Kun didn't say anything either, so he walked out of the hall. At this moment, the person standing behind Elder Kun also walked out and followed behind Zheng Tan. Ranchi and Leopard quickly looked at each other. They couldn't help but worry. Although they didn't like the cat causing trouble here, they didn't want anything to happen to the cat. Not only was the cat familiar with Celestine, Air Mao, and Fong San, but it had also helped them a few times. This time, they were the ones who had dragged the cat into this matter. Lord Kun. Yi Hao was obviously afraid that Lord Kun would really send someone to kill the cat silently. He was about to say something, but just as he opened his mouth, Lord Kun raised his hand and stopped him. He picked up the teacup and drank some water. He started to talk about his opinion on the distribution of benefits proposed by Yi Hao. He didn't want to listen to Yi Hao at all. The broken vase and bamboo were lying on the ground, but Lord Kun didn't ask anyone to clean it up. Zheng Tan, who was walking out of the hall, heard someone following behind him. He turned around and saw that it was the person who opened the door. This person had been following Lord Kun since he entered the house. Was he following him now to spy on him? When he passed by a room, Zheng Tan stopped in his tracks. The door of the room was ajar. It seemed to be a study. Zheng Tan tried to take 2 steps in. Seeing that the person behind him didn't have any intention of stopping him, he walked in. The study wasn't much smaller than the living room. There were some paintings hanging on the wall. There was a long table by the side with some gypsum carvings on the table. There were also some in the corner. The gypsum carvings were of different sizes. The taller ones were about 1 meter, such as the ones in the corner, while the shorter ones were only about 20 centimeters tall. There were people and animals carved out. Compared to those masters, there was no doubt that there was a gap. However, if these were carved by a blind old man, then it was rare. Moreover, no one mentioned that Lord Kun was a sculptor. Even a person with normal eyes might not be able to carve as good as Lord Kun. After looking at the gypsum carvings one by one, Zheng Tan's gaze landed on the paintings hanging on the wall. Zheng Tan had seen some ink paintings at Professor Lan's house. Other than fiddling with flowers and plants, Old Man Lan also painted ink paintings. His paintings were quite elegant. Even if he didn't know much about painting, Zheng Tan could tell that Lord Kun's painting was far from Old Man Lan's. However, he couldn't be too harsh on a blind person's painting. However, overall, it looked good. Zheng Tan admired it from the bottom of his heart. There was a piece of calligraphy beside the painting. Relatively speaking, the calligraphy was much better than the painting. It was also very imposing. There was once when Zheng Tan went to Professor Lan's house. The old man was practicing calligraphy. When he saw Zheng Tan, he became addicted to teaching again and talked about calligraphy. He remembered that Old Man Lan said that a work without momentum would be dull and lacking in spirit. Those with momentum would have the momentum of wind and clouds when splashing the ink. Those with momentum would have the momentum of wind when splashing the ink. Zheng Tan didn't know much about art, but he felt that the calligraphy in front of him definitely reached the standard that Old Man Lan had mentioned. However, Zheng Tan looked at the words, 13 gangsters, written on it and wondered what Lord Kun meant by writing these words. Didn't people usually write mottos or proverbs with positive meanings? Or did they write words like, endure, or, kill, to show off a little? He looked at the other calligraphy and paintings in the study and connected them to Lord Kun. Although he didn't know what kind of person the old man was, Zheng Tan heard from the Jiao Pa that a big shot was not arrogant because of his broad vision. He knew that there were mountains beyond mountains and buildings beyond buildings. Because of his rich experience, he knew that a moment of pride wouldn't be able to control the ups and downs of others. A real big shot wasn't without enemies. In a head-on confrontation, he wouldn't hesitate to put his opponent to death. However, he would be humble behind his back and know the beauty of evil. Regardless of how glorious or evil Lord Kun was in the past, just based on the things that Jingtan saw, this old man really didn't live a good life. People said that blind artists had broken free from the shackles of being unable to see with their naked eyes and could use other extraordinary methods to see objects. Other than having a solid foundation and the ability to conceive ideas in their minds, it was very likely that they had special abilities to be able to achieve such amazing achievements. Jingtan didn't know if the old man had special abilities, but now he seemed to understand why the old man walked so steadily, unlike some of the blind people that Jingtan had seen before who walked carefully and often stumbled. The person behind Jingtan didn't make a sound. If he hadn't heard this person respectfully greet Lord Kun when he first entered the room, Jingtan would have thought that this guy was mute. When they returned to the living room again, Yi Hao and Lord Kun were almost done talking, and the atmosphere had eased a lot. Seeing that Jingtan was fine, Yi Hao and the others heaved a sigh of relief. When they left, Yi Hao said that he would send Jingtan back to Tsinghua University, and Lord Kun agreed. After Yi Hao and Jingtan left, the person who had followed Jingtan out of the living room walked to Lord Kun's side. After that cat went in today, he told Lord Kun in detail about Jingtan's every move in the study. "I don't think that cat is with Yi Hao and the others," the person said. "Yes." Lord Kun went silent after that, but the people around him knew that Lord Kun already knew that this would be the result. As for why Lord Kun paid attention to that cat, it seemed that after knowing that Nian 19 had a cat, Lord Kun usually paid attention to the cats around him. Although he couldn't see, he could detect some things with his extremely sharp hearing and perception. For example, when the cats saw Lord Kun, they would run far away. Even if they didn't run, they would never approach him. Even trained cats would show a strong sense of vigilance. The old man had already restrained himself. This afternoon, when Lord Kun came back, there was a person feeding a cat at the entrance of a barbecue shop. The cat cried out for food, but when Lord Kun passed by, the cat ran away without making a sound. Nian 19's cat also arched its back and growled when it saw Lord Kun, as if it was facing a great enemy. Therefore, when Elder Kun first noticed a cat approaching on the overpass, his first thought was, "This cat is either stupid or extremely bold." But later, Lord Kun knew that wasn't the case. It was rare to have such a cat. When Jingtan went back in Yi Hao's car, he thought that Yi Hao would scold him for breaking the vase in the living room. He didn't expect that Yi Hao would only say that the night building would open a single room for Jingtan. Yi Hao was in a good mood after finishing something that had been weighing on his mind for a long time. Moreover, after leaving Lord Kun's place, Yi Hao thought a lot and analyzed every detail. Maybe it was because of this cat's antics that he could be so successful? Maybe. Originally, Tsinghua University wasn't too far away from here, but Yi Hao still asked someone to drive the car to the side door closest to the eastern courtyard. He also told Jingtan that when he followed Celestine to the night building, he might be able to see his small single room. When Jingtan entered the courtyard, he saw that it was already past 5:00 at the gate. It was close to little Pomelo's school time, so he turned around and went to the affiliated primary school. Recently, the children of the affiliated primary school were in a good mood. It was probably because the first day of June was approaching and the holidays were coming. They could enjoy the holiday benefits that came with their age, but Jiao Yuan and the others couldn't. They had already been promoted from the Young Pioneers to the Communist Youth League, so how could they enjoy Children's Day? When little Pomelo came out, Yulisha and Xia Xian, the two children in the Western District who were close to little Pomelo, came out together. When they came out, the two girls looked at Jingtan who was squatting on the wall, then said to little Pomelo, "We'll leave your cat to you." Chapter 199. Important people had their own attitudes towards life, while ordinary people had their own way of living. Jingtan felt that her cat preferred the life in the courtyard. It was relaxed and comfortable, and she didn't have to worry about breaking a vase. She didn't have to get involved in any of the major events that were going on under the surface. It could throw a tantrum and have fun, and it could eat and drink as it pleased. It was much more natural at the Jiao family's place. However, Jingtian's good mood was ruined after dinner. A mythical beast? Jiao Ma paused in the middle of picking up a green pepper. She then asked little Pomelo, "Why did you ask Black Charcoal to go there?" Yulisha said that it would attract more attention. She said it's called. Little Pomelo thought about the word. Yeah, she said it's called a gimmick. Jiao Ma was speechless. Even this little kid knew how to make a gimmick. Little Pomelo stuffed rice into her mouth. She didn't want to let Jiao Ma know that she had something to say. Yulisha, who was the vice class monitor of the 4th grade class 3 and also the organizer of the show, had said that the first part of the show was to compete for rewards. She heard that the top 3 performers would receive generous rewards, and the outstanding performers would also receive awards from the school. These awards would be recorded in the files, and they would be useful for the class committee members at the end of the semester. It would be easier for them to apply for class committee positions in middle school. The second part of the show was to show their filial piety to their parents. This way, it would be easier for them to get pocket money in the future. They might even be able to take them to the amusement park during the holidays. What's the gimmick? Jiao Yuan fully demonstrated his lack of vocabulary. The 3 members of the Jiao family were thinking about the gimmick, while Jingtian was thinking about the alpaca in his heart. Damn it, why did you ask me to act as a mythical beast? For the students of Tsinghua University's affiliated primary school, June 1st meant that they could watch a cultural performance. In the past, it was basically just each class having fun on their own. That was to say, on the afternoon before the June 1st holiday, they would play in their respective classes and sing to show their talents. The school would also give out small biscuits and the like for the children to have fun. Later, one of the parents in the education department suggested that they use Tsinghua University's auditorium for a cultural performance. After all, the auditorium had nothing to do with the university students on June 1st. If it was empty, they could borrow some resources. At the same time, they could also improve the children's teamwork and aesthetic appeal. That was why they went to Tsinghua University's auditorium to perform during the Children's Day holiday. When Yulisha suggested that there should be a performance, all the students in Class 3 of the 4th grade were very supportive because all the classes with performances could go to the auditorium to watch the performance. After all, there were limited seats in the auditorium. Many parents would also go there. If there weren't enough seats, the classes with no performances could just watch the performance in their own class. After all, every class had a television and the school's radio station would broadcast it live. According to little Pomelo's explanation, Class 3 of the 4th grade was prepared to go all out this time. Those who were good at crafting started to make some simple props, while those who knew how to play musical instruments started to practice. The story they were going to perform was a story written by Yulisha herself. A filial son traveled through mountains and rivers to save his bedridden mother. He went through all kinds of hardships, passed through all kinds of obstacles, and defeated all kinds of monsters. In the end, he obtained a snow lotus from a mythical beast on a snowy mountain and went back to cure his mother. Zheng Tian felt that this story was very familiar. He felt that many TV dramas, movies, and even one of his commercials used this story. However, when it was a children's performance, the audience didn't care about the story. They just wanted to see their own children perform. The story was secondary. They just wanted to see it for the fun of it. Before they decided to let Zheng Tian play the mythical beast, Class 3 of the 4th grade had rehearsed many times. The props were almost done and they even had a pre-show. After all, there were too many classes who signed up for the performance. The auditorium's performance time was limited, so they had to eliminate a batch of students. There was no ranking for the pre-show. Only the last class who could perform in the auditorium were notified. From the pre-show, it could be seen that there were too many outstanding performances and there was too much competition. Just like little Pomelo said, they had to use something different. Thus, Zheng Tian was on the list. Many people in Fu Hai Elementary School, especially those in little Pomelo's class, knew that her black cat came to pick her up after school every day and was very obedient. Thus, Yulisha turned her attention to Zheng Tian. Little Pomelo actually didn't agree to let Zheng Tian go, but there were too many classmates who came to persuade her. Yulisha and Xia Xian had mentioned it many times in front of her. Only then did she decide to ask Jingtan's opinion. If Jingtan didn't want to go, she would reject it tomorrow. Although playing the role of the mythical beast didn't make Jingtan happy, he didn't want to make things difficult for little Pomelo. In class, Yulisha and Xia Xian had helped little Pomelo a lot. Jingtan wanted to help this time as a way of thanking her. Moreover, this child didn't like to talk and was easily alienated from others. If this went well, little Pomelo could mix better in class. The next day, at about 10 o'clock in the morning, Jingtan didn't go to other places and went directly to Fu Hai Elementary School. Little Pomelo and the others' last class in the morning was physical education. Because of the performance, Yulisha asked their physical education teacher to let them prepare for the performance during this class. The physical education teacher also knew about the performance and didn't think much about it and agreed. Little Pomelo and the others rehearsed in a corner of the field. Fu Hai Elementary School wasn't big, so Jingtan was familiar with it. He didn't go through the front door, but went outside near the field and then climbed over the wall to see them. When the rehearsal was about to start, Jingtan saw that they were standing in a formation with Yulisha directing. More than 10 children held a piece of paper in front of their chest. On the paper were the names of the characters they were going to play. Little Pomelo was one of them. Jingtan looked at the paper that little Pomelo was holding. It was written Redbud. The other children standing there were holding papers with the names of plants written on them. These children were the background characters who didn't need to say a word after going on stage. Thinking about it, little Pomelo usually gave people the impression that she was too serious and cold. She wasn't good with words. If she was going to act, this kind of character was more suitable. Jingtan wondered what would happen if they put on props. When the time came, they would have to put on props. Now, they only used paper to replace props for rehearsals. They were afraid that they would break the props and leave them for the performance in the auditorium. A student saw Jingtan standing on the wall and pointed at Jingtan and said to little Pomelo, "Gu Yuzi, your mythical beast is here." A mythical beast is here? Quite punctual. The others echoed. Jingtan. You guys are mythical beasts, your whole family are mythical beasts. He pulled his ears unhappily and didn't jump down the wall. He just stood there and watched the children rehearse. The performance time for each performance was about 20 minutes, so if there was too much content, it had to be compressed. The main character was the class sports committee member. This child's appearance wasn't the most outstanding in the class, and his acting skills were mediocre, but his advantage was that he could somersault. Moreover, Jingtan watched their performance. Every time he made a move, he would somersault first. He didn't know if this was the gimmick that Yulisha mentioned. The scope was to attract people's attention. There were also a few who acted as the villain monsters. They were so engrossed that they were even more energetic than the main character. Jingtan originally thought that these children would be more repulsed by the villain role, but now it seemed that they were enjoying it. When it was almost over, Jingtan, the mythical beast, was about to appear. Yulisha pulled a weed out of nowhere and handed it to Jingtan. Last night, little Pomelo told Jingtan what to do, so Jingtan knew what to do next. Therefore, he jumped down the wall, held the poor weed between his claws, and waited for the main character to come and take it. In the last scene, the main character fed the elixir to his bedridden mother. Before this, Jingtan had been curious as to who would play the role of the mother, and whether or not the teacher would make a cameo appearance. Now, she saw the child holding the elixir and walking to Yulisha with an excited expression. Your illness can be cured. Jingtan, after class, Yulisha, Xia Xian, and little Pomelo slowly walked to the school gate. They were discussing what they needed to prepare so that they could work overtime together at night. Jingtan ran to the school gate and squatted on top of the wall. He didn't want to squeeze with the other students. Just as he was thinking about why Yulisha was so troublesome and walked like a turtle, Jingtan suddenly saw a person standing not far away. His first thought was that this person was up to no good. A thief? No, that's not it. Jingtan observed that the person's eyes were fixed on the children. Jingtan felt that the person looked at the children differently than others. Perhaps the children didn't feel it, and the parents didn't notice it either. However, Jingtan's intuition told him that this person was up to no good. When the person inadvertently saw Jingtan squatting on top of the wall, Jingtan bared his fangs at him. When little Pomelo came out and Jingtan looked again, the person was no longer there. He probably left. In the afternoon, Jingtan sent little Pomelo to the affiliated primary school as usual. When they were about to reach the school, Jingtan saw a person standing at the intersection. It was the person he saw in the morning after school. Sensing Jingtan's strange behavior, little Pomelo followed his line of sight. At the same time, the person also looked over. When he saw little Pomelo looking at him, he smiled. Little Pomelo frowned. Although she didn't know how to read people, she had a bad feeling about this person. Therefore, she quickened her pace and walked towards the affiliated primary school. Jingtan followed behind little Pomelo. He turned his head to look at the person standing at the intersection and narrowed his eyes. If this person walked over to little Pomelo and said, "Little girl, Uncle will take you to see the goldfish," Jingtan would immediately beat this person up until even his mother couldn't recognize him. Then, he would find a chance to throw him into the lake and feed him to the fish. Just as Jingtan was wondering if the man would kick him with his left or right leg first, and whether he would kick his face or his manhood first, the man looked away. The person didn't continue to stare at little Pomelo. Instead, he looked at the other children who came to school, especially those who didn't have an adult accompanying them. Jingtan didn't feel that there was much lust in his gaze, but it made him extremely uncomfortable.